You open your eyes to fire. Blades of red clash against blades of blue, sparks showering across a battlefield that never ends. You hear screams, chants, the roar of ships tearing the sky apart. This is not just one war. It is thousands of years of blood, betrayal, and shadows stretching across the galaxy. You think you know the Sith, but you don't. Their story is not about battles won. It's about whispers that never die. And tonight, you will walk through every war they ever waged. So sit back, grab a snack, and let your imagination drift across the stars. And remember, if you enjoy this journey, subscribe. Because the story of the galaxy is far from over. You open your eyes, and the galaxy is quiet. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet that comes when something terrible is waiting to be born. The stars burn cold above you, scattered like shards of glass across a void that feels too large, too empty. You listen, and in that silence, you hear it. A whisper. At first, faint, then louder. A whisper that is not sound, not voice, but something older, something heavier. Something that crawls across your skin and coils in your chest like smoke. The Jedi once told you the Force binds all living things together, that it is light, warmth, balance. But here, in the dark, you feel another truth. The Force does not only bind, it suffocates, it bends, it bleeds. And when it is twisted, it whispers. Long before the Sith were an empire, before their name echoed in fear across the stars, they were not an army. They were not even a people. They were exiles, Jedi who turned their backs on light, who saw compassion as weakness, who chose anger over serenity. Imagine the shame, the fury, the bitterness of being cast out by the very order you once called family. Their hearts blackened not in a moment, but slowly, drip by drip, like ink spilling into water until it stains everything. You feel them now, drifting through the void. Warriors and thinkers, dreamers and heretics, each carrying the same wound, the same hunger. The galaxy believes they are gone, erased from the halls of the Jedi Temple, their names struck from memory. But memory is a fragile shield. Hate is not. Their anger becomes a seed, and in the silence of forgotten worlds, it begins to grow. You can almost smell the air of those exile ships, stale, recycled, heavy with sweat and desperation. The sound of creaking hulls echoing like groans of the damned. Men and women wrapped in cloaks that once bore the crest of the Jedi Order, now torn and dirtied, eyes burning with the knowledge that they were cast aside. Some weep, some curse, some sit in silence, their hands gripping the edges of their seats so hard the metal bends. And among them, one truth hardens in every heart. If the Jedi could not accept them, then the galaxy would learn to fear them. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because in casting out your own, you only planted enemies you did not yet understand. The whispers grow louder as their ships drift farther into the void. They do not die in exile. They endure, and endurance becomes vengeance. They wander to the edges of known space, stumbling across systems that no Jedi chart had ever marked. And there, they find something waiting. A world scorched red beneath a star that burns too close. A world thick with stone tombs that rise like broken teeth. A world where the Force feels different, heavier, thicker, darker. Korriban. You stand on its sands, and they crunch beneath your boots like bones ground to powder. The air is hot, sharp, filled with dust that coats your tongue and stings your lungs. The sky glows orange with endless twilight, as though the sun is always setting but never quite gone. And everywhere you turn you see statues, giants carved in stone, their faces twisted with cruelty, their eyes hollow, their mouths locked in eternal screams. These are not monuments. They are warnings. And the Jedi exiles ignore them. They wander into tombs that reek of death and incense, where the walls pulse with murals painted in blood and ash. They hear voices echoing from chambers long collapsed, voices that call their names, though they never spoke them aloud. The exiles feel the whispers seep into their bones, twisting their thoughts, feeding their hunger. They were cast out, yes, but here, on this world, they are not outcasts, they are chosen. You shiver because you realize what they are walking into. They do not know it yet, but you do. They have found the Sith. Not Sith as empire, Sith as species, a people born to the dark, their skin red as the sands, their eyes yellow like fire, their temples drenched in rituals older than the Republic itself. The exiles do not conquer them, they merge with them. They intermarry, they take crowns, they bend the Force together until it screams. The Jedi exiles bring their knowledge of lightsabers and codes. The Sith natives offer blood rituals and fury older than language. Together, they forge something new, something terrible. And in that merging, in that marriage of exile and native, the Sith as you know them are born. You hear it now, not just whispers, chants. Loud, layered, echoing across stone and sand. You see the first Dark Lords raising their hands in unison, their voices bending the Force into storms that tear mountains apart. You see armies kneeling at their feet, chanting their names, their eyes wide with terror and devotion. You see children taken from their mothers, their small hands guided into fire, their screams silenced by shadows until their voices chant too. The whispers have become a song, and from that song, a promise rises. The Jedi will pay, the galaxy will burn, and the Sith will rule. But listen closer. Beneath the chants, beneath the drums, beneath the screams, the whispers remain. They never go away. They are patient. They are cruel. They are inevitable. Because the Sith are not just warlords. They are not just a people. They are an idea. And ideas do not die. The chants grow louder until they rattle the stone beneath your feet, until they shake the very air from your lungs. The Dark Lords raise their blades, the red glow burning brighter than suns, their armor clashing as they march into the night. You hear fleets preparing, you smell fuel burning, you taste blood on the air. The first war is coming, you know it, they know it, and the galaxy sleeps unaware of the storm building in silence. You close your eyes, and you hear the whisper again. Just one, soft, sharp, certain. We remain. And when you open them, you see the stars ignite with fire. The Sith are no longer whispers, they are war. You feel the heat first. It presses against your skin like a hand too close to flame, dry and relentless, sinking deep into your lungs with every breath. The red sands of Korriban stretch before you, endless and sharp, glittering beneath a sun that burns too hot, too near. Every grain feels heavy, every step sinks deeper than it should, as though the ground itself resents you for walking here. The air is not air, it is dust. It scratches your throat, coats your tongue, makes your teeth feel like stone. You taste rust, you taste blood, you taste the weight of centuries buried beneath this cursed world. The wind rises, and it does not whistle. It howls, a low, guttural sound that twists through jagged cliffs and broken canyons like a voice carried from somewhere far below. It carries with it the scent of something sharp and rotten, like copper mixed with ash, like a tomb cracked open after too many years. And as you walk, you feel eyes on you, not eyes of the living, but of the dead. Statues loom on either side of the path, carved from stone so dark it swallows light. Their faces are twisted into sneers, their mouths frozen mid-chant, their hollow eyes forever watching. They are not monuments, they are warnings, and still, you keep walking. The Jedi exiles kept walking too, long ago. They had been cast out of the Order, stripped of their names, their blades, their honor. But here, on this scorched world, they found something waiting. They found the Sith, a people born to shadow, their skin red as the sands, their temples filled with rituals older than the Republic itself. To the exiles, they were not strangers. They were reflections. The Sith saw their anger, their pride, their hunger for more, and welcomed it. And the exiles, wounded and furious, welcomed the Sith in return. Together, they made something worse. You enter a canyon where the sun cannot reach, and the air grows colder, heavier. The walls rise high on either side, etched with symbols that glow faint red, pulsing faintly like veins filled with fire. They hum when you pass, and the hum rattles your bones. You run your hand along the stone, and it burns, not with heat, but with energy. The dark side. You feel it coil up your arm, slither into your chest, curl into your thoughts. It does not soothe. It does not comfort. It tempts, it whispers, it promises. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you were told to fear the dark, to resist it, to close your heart against it. But here, on Korriban, the dark side is not a whisper to resist. It is the air you breathe. It is the ground you walk. It is the blood in your veins. You reach the mouth of a tomb. Its doors are taller than any temple, carved with figures that writhe in endless torment, their faces screaming, their hands clawing upward. The ground before it is littered with bones, too many to count, too weathered to name. They crunch beneath your boots as you step forward. The door groans as it opens, not by your hand, but by will alone, as though it knows you are coming. Inside, the air is thick with incense and rot. The darkness is total, broken only by faint flickers of red light that crawl along the walls. You hear chanting, low, layered, endless, not from throats of flesh, but from the very stone. The walls themselves hum with voices, carrying words older than memory, older than language. They speak of hunger, of conquest, of vengeance. And though you cannot understand them, you feel them in your chest, pounding with every heartbeat. You descend deeper. The air grows colder still, sharp as knives against your skin. The floor beneath you is slick, polished smooth by centuries of footsteps. You smell blood, old, iron thick, baked into the stone. You hear whispers at your ear, soft and sharp, each one calling you by name, though you never gave it. They promise power. They promise eternity. They promise everything you were denied. And then you see them. The first Dark Lords of the Sith, their forms carved into sarcophagi that line the chamber. Their faces are cruel, their eyes half closed, their hands clutching blades that never rust. Their crowns gleam faintly in the dark, their mouths twisted into sneers that have not faded even in death. You feel their presence heavy on your shoulders, pressing you down, forcing you to bow. Not because you want to, but because the weight of their will is too strong. This is where the Sith truly began, not in the exile, not in the anger, but here, in the merging of dead and living, shadow and flesh. The exiles took the rituals of the Sith, the chants, the blood sacrifices, and fused them with their Jedi training. Their lightsabers burned brighter, their armies grew larger, their hatred sharper. And with every generation, the line between exile and Sith blurred. Until they were no longer outcasts, they were lords. You feel the moment it happens, the birth of shadows. The chamber trembles, the sarcophagi hum louder, the air splits with fire. You see the exiles kneeling before the tombs, their heads bowed, their voices chanting alongside the stone. You see them raise their hands, and red lightning leaps from their fingers, tearing into the walls, burning scars that will never heal. You see them crowned, their eyes burning yellow, their mouths whispering promises of eternal war. And you know what is coming. The Sith have found their true home. Here, among tombs and spirit. Yes, their empire begins. The chants echo louder, rattling the stone, shaking the air, crawling beneath your skin. You hear armies gathering outside, their boots pounding against the sand in rhythm with the chants. You hear ships roaring in the skies above, their engines screaming like beasts ready to strike. You feel the weight of war pressing down, inevitable, unstoppable. You look back at the tombs one last time. The faces of the Dark Lords seem sharper now, their eyes glowing faintly, their mouths twisting wider. They are not dead. They are waiting. Waiting for their empire to rise, waiting for their shadows to spread, waiting for the galaxy to remember their name. The whispers swell until they are screams. The tomb shakes, the sand outside shifts, the stars above burn brighter. You realize the Sith are no longer whispers. They are chants, they are storms, they are shadows, and when they rise, the galaxy will tremble. You hear the sound first, metal on stone, sharp and steady, ringing like a hammer against the bones of the world. It echoes down the canyons of Korriban, carried by the endless winds, and when it reaches you, it feels less like sound and more like prophecy. Again and again it strikes, until it becomes rhythm, until it becomes chant. The broken Jedi are no longer just survivors. They are building something. You stand in the red sands, and before your eyes, the exiles transform. Their cloaks, once frayed and torn, are stripped away. Their sabers, once built to defend, are reforged to conquer. Their faces harden, their voices sharpen, their hands grip hilts, not as monks, but as kings. The Jedi, who once swore to keep the peace, now raise crowns above their heads, and in the dust of exile, the first Sith Lords are born. The air is thick with smoke. Forges burn in caves carved into the cliffs, their fire spilling out across the sands like molten veins. The heat is suffocating, filling your lungs with ash, coating your tongue with copper. You smell blood, not fresh, but dried, baked into the stone from countless sacrifices. You hear the chants of the Sith natives, their voices layered and deep, mixing with the whispers of the exiles. Together, their voices merge into something darker, not whispers, not songs, declarations. You step closer to the forges. Sparks leap from stone to sand, flashing like stars, searing your skin when they land too near. Inside, shadows move. Men and women bend metal, their hands blistered, their eyes hollow, their bodies trembling. But they do not stop. They carve blades from stone and steel, etching runes into hilts with blood from their own veins. When the metal cools, the blades hum, not with light, but with shadow, a crimson glow that burns like rage made solid. You see one of them lift a blade for the first time. His hand shakes, his body still weak, eerie from exile. But when the saber ignites, red floods the chamber, and his eyes reflect it. He laughs, not the laugh of joy, but the laugh of someone who has found himself again, who has found the weapon that matches the hunger in his chest. That hunger has a name now. It is Sith. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you taught your people to resist anger, to bury their hunger, to hide their fear. But when they finally embraced it, they became stronger than you ever imagined. You step out into the valley of Korriban, and you see more. Temples rise where there was once only rock, carved by hand, by blade, by blood. Stone drips with red paint, with runes that twist into shapes you cannot understand. Statues tower above, their faces cruel, their crowns jagged, their eyes hollow. The exiles kneel before them, and in doing so, they become the statues themselves. They carve their own faces into stone, their own names into walls, their own power into eternity. Crowns are forged, not from gold, but from iron and bone. You watch as one exile kneels, her head lowered, her body trembling. The natives chant, the drums pound, and the crown is lowered onto her head. Blood drips from her brow, the weight nearly breaks her neck. But when she rises, her eyes glow yellow, and her voice shakes the air. She is no longer exile, she is Lord. You see more, one by one, each transformation heavier, crueler. Jedi robes are burned in great pyres, their smoke rising into the red sky. Sabers are cast into cauldrons, reforged into new shapes, new colors, new weapons of conquest. The light dies, and in its place, red burns. The Jedi are no more. The Sith have risen. The chants echo louder. You feel them in your chest, in your bones, in your blood. Power, hunger, rule. Over and over, until they are not just words but truths. The exiles carve their will into stone, but more than that, they carve it into themselves. Their faces twist with cruelty, their voices sharpen into commands, their hands tremble not with fear but with anticipation. They are no longer hiding, they are no longer cast out, they are crowned, they are chosen, and they are ready for war. The valley fills with armies. The Sith natives kneel, their armor painted with ash, their blades dripping with blood. They chant the names of their new lords, their voices rising like thunder. You hear the pounding of drums, the clash of steel, the stomp of boots. Dust rises from the valley floor, mixing with smoke until the entire sky glows red. Above, ships rise. The exiles have learned not only to fight, but to conquer. Their fleets are no longer small, broken, desperate. They are sharp, disciplined, endless. Engines roar, fire spills from wings, shadows stretch across the sands as the ships lift into the sky. The Sith are not bound to Korriban anymore. They are reaching outward, their shadows seen, retching across the stars. And yet, In the midst of all this power, you feel something heavier still. The tombs, the old lords buried deep beneath the sands, their presence hums in the air, louder now, sharper now. They approve, they whisper, they promise. And the new lords listen. They kneel not just to their armies, but to the dead. They carve their will into blood not just for themselves, but for the shadows that linger, waiting, always waiting. You realize with a shiver that this is not rebirth. This is continuation. The Sith were always here, in tombs and whispers, in chants and dust. The exiles have not created something new. They have given form to what was always waiting. They are not kings. They are vessels. The first Sith Lords rise, and their names are carved into stone. Their crowns gleam red in the firelight. Their blades burn crimson against the night sky. Their armies chant their names, their people kneel, their enemies tremble. And above them all the tombs whisper louder, their shadows stretching, their promises curling across the stars. The Jedi do not know yet. The Republic does not see yet. But you see. You feel it in the sand, in the air, in the fire. A storm is building. A storm of stone and blood, of crowns and blades, of shadows given form. The first Sith Lords have risen, and with them, the promise of endless war. You close your eyes, and the sound of hammers on stone returns. Sharp, steady, prophecy. And when you open them, you see the fleets ignite, the armies march, the tombs glow. The exiles are gone, the lords remain. You open your eyes, and the galaxy is no longer quiet. It shakes, it burns, it screams. What was once only whispers in tombs, what was once only the exiles' fury in the sands of Korriban, has broken free. The silence is shattered, torn apart by the sound of fleets roaring into the stars, by the clash of blades lit crimson, by the crack of temples collapsing into ash. This is the moment the galaxy wakes to the shadow it tried to forget. The first great Sith War has begun. You hear it first as thunder, not from storms, but from engines. Sith warships rise from Korriban, their hulls jagged, their frames heavy with spikes of steel and bone. The air shakes as they pierce the atmosphere, fire trailing behind them like comets. You taste fuel in the air, acrid and bitter, coating your tongue with the promise of war. From orbit, the fleets gather, their shadows blotting out the stars. You hear drums from their decks, pounding in rhythm with the chants of soldiers who kneel to their new lords. And when those engines scream, the sound is not just metal, it is rage, amplified 1,000-fold. The Jedi do not see it at first. They are scattered, lost in their duties across the Republic. They sense unease in the Force, a ripple of something heavier than fear. But they tell themselves it is nothing. They always tell themselves it is nothing, until it is too late. And so they pray in temples of white stone, their hands folded, their chants soft, their minds blind. They do not know that as they whisper, the Sith are already marching. You watch the first strike unfold. The Sith do not come with warnings, they come with fire. Worlds near the edges of the Republic burn first. Fleets descend through clouds, red bolts streaking the skies like meteors. Cities are torn apart in minutes, their towers collapsing as rubble crushes the screaming below. Children run through streets filled with smoke, their eyes wide, their mouths raw from cries that no one answers. The air is filled with the stench of ash and blood, carried on winds that reek of burning stone. The Sith do not conquer quietly. They announce themselves with destruction. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because by the time you saw the fire was already everywhere. You feel the Jedi's shock. Messages flood their temples, desperate pleas from governors and generals. Smoke-filled holograms show fleets breaking apart, soldiers falling beneath waves of crimson fire. And in that moment, the Jedi realize what they tried to forget. The Sith were never gone. They were waiting. They were building. And now they have returned. The Jedi Council gathers. You can almost hear the chamber, its walls tall and polished, the light spilling in from high windows. Masters sit in silence, their faces pale, their voices heavy. They speak of fear, of balance, of prophecy. But underneath their words, you hear something else. Doubt. Because if the Sith could rise again, what else might be true? What else have they been blind to? Meanwhile, the Sith press on. Their fleets move like storms, fast and merciless, burning system after system. You hear the clash of metal as Sith warriors stride into battle, their sabers burning red, their armor black with jagged edges. Their footsteps pound against the ground in rhythm with drums, their chants echoing across cities as they carve their way forward. Behind them, civilians are chained, ships are looted, temples are torn down. The Sith leave nothing behind but fire and silence. The war spreads faster than anyone imagined. Hyperlanes become rivers of blood. Worlds that once knew only peace now echo with screams. Republic soldiers fall by the thousands, their blasters useless against waves of warriors driven by hunger and hate. You hear the cries of commanders begging for reinforcements, their voices breaking as their fleets collapse. You smell ozone, sharp and bitter, where ships burn in the void. You taste smoke where temples fall to rubble. And then, betrayal, because the Sith did not rise alone. Some worlds welcomed them. Some Jedi turned. They saw power in red sabers, strength in dark chants, freedom in rage. They whispered to themselves that the Jedi way was too weak, too slow, too blind. And so they knelt before the Sith, their blue sabers extinguished, their loyalty carved into the bodies of the brothers and sisters they once fought beside. That betrayal cut deeper than any blade. Because the Sith did not just fight the Jedi, they split them. You watch as temple after temple collapses. One stands tall on a world of green hills, its spires reaching into the sky. You hear the chants of younglings within, their voices soft and unbroken. And then, silence. The ground shakes as Sith ships descend. Fire rains from the sky, shattering the spires, crushing the halls. Screams echo as flames roar, drowning out prayers, drowning out hope. When the smoke clears, the temple is nothing but rubble, and the only sound is the laughter of Sith Lords carving their victory into stone. The war becomes endless. Fleets tear across the stars, burning light into dark. Every battle feels like the last, yet every battle only leads to another. Soldiers fight until their bodies break, then are raised again to fight in shadows. Cities are rebuilt only to be destroyed again, and through it all, the chants of the Sith grow louder, echoing in caverns, in ships, in Tem. Please. They are not whispers anymore. They are storms. And yet, you feel something else beneath the fire, something colder, because the Sith are not just fighting to win. They are fighting to erase the Jedi, to erase the Republic, to erase peace itself. They want the galaxy not just conquered, but remade in their image. Every spire turned to ash, every chant silenced but theirs, every whisper drowned until only shadows remain. The Jedi begin to fight back. Their sabers ignite, blue and green cutting against crimson. Their fleets roar into battle. Their chants rise in defiance. You hear their cries, see their blades clash, feel their desperation. They fight not for conquest, but for survival. They fight for every world burning, for every voice silenced. And for a moment, you feel the balance tremble. Perhaps the Jedi can win. Perhaps the Sith can be stopped. But then, you remember the truth. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you fought with all you had, the dark side was patient. The dark side was cruel. The dark side always waited for you to falter. The war rages on. Temples fall. Fleets burn. The galaxy trembles. And somewhere in the midst of fire and screams, you hear the whisper again. Soft, sharp, certain. We remain. The silence is gone. The war has begun. And it will only get worse. You open your eyes, and you see a man who is not just a man. He stands cloaked in flame, his form framed by the glow of stars burning too close, his hand lifted high as though it alone can hold the weight of suns. His name will echo through history in whispers of awe and curses of fear. Naga Sadow, Sith Lord, dreamer, gambler. He is not satisfied with armies, not content with thrones of stone. His hunger is larger than fleets, larger than worlds. His hunger is the galaxy itself. The air around him shimmers with heat, thick with incense that burns sharp in your nose, stinging your lungs. The chamber is carved from obsidian, walls etched with runes that glow faintly red, pulsing with each beat of his heart. The air hums, heavy with energy that feels like the world itself is holding its breath. Outside, drums thunder. His armies chant his name, ships wait in orbit, their engines screaming for war. But inside, Sadow's focus is elsewhere. Not on them, not even on his enemies, on the stars. He stretches his hand and you feel it. Gravity bends, suns tremble. The force writhes under his will, bending not like water, but like glass about to shatter. He does not think small. He does not settle for conquest one system at a time. His ambition is cosmic. He seeks to turn the galaxy itself into his weapon. He pulls light into darkness, bends fire into storm, and for a moment you think he might succeed. For a moment you think the stars themselves obey him. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because while you meditated on balance, Sith like Sadow were trying to pull suns out of the sky. The galaxy watches as his war begins. Sadow commands not only fleets, but illusions. His enemies look to the stars and see not one armada, but hundreds, thousands. Holograms, spun from the Force itself, trick entire systems into surrender. Soldiers kneel, not because they are defeated, but because they believe they are already outnumbered. His sorcery spreads terror faster than blasters, his deceptions breaking worlds before a single shot is fired. But he is not just deception. He is fire. You hear the roar of his fleets as they descend, their engines screaming through the void, their cannons spitting red into the night. Planets crack under his will, cities collapse beneath the weight of his armies. You smell ozone as ships burn, taste ash as temples crumble. You hear the screams of millions carried through the Force, amplified by his power until they become a song of war that rattles your chest. And always, Sadow stands at the center. Cloaked in fire, his eyes burning brighter than sabers, his hands raised as though he holds the galaxy itself in his grasp. His ambition burns brighter than his army, brighter even than the stars he bends. His voice echoes in chambers of stone and halls of steel, promising his people victory, promising the galaxy subjugation, promising himself eternity. Yet even as he rises, you feel it, the crack. Ambition so bright always casts a long shadow. His illusions begin to falter. His enemies begin to see through the smoke. The Jedi, scattered and broken, start to gather. The Republic, terrified and bleeding, begins to harden. Sadow stretches too far, pulls too much, believes too deeply in his own legend. For every sun he bends, a star slips from his grasp. For every world he conquers, another rises in rebellion. Still, he pushes. He cannot stop. He will not stop. His fleets burn brighter, his sorcery grows darker, his hand stretches wider. He gambles everything, not just his army, not just his throne, but the very survival of his people. He believes if he burns hot enough, bright enough, he can scorch his name into eternity. You see him now, at the height of his gamble. He stands aboard his flagship, its decks trembling under the weight of engines running too hot, its hull glowing with the heat of suns too near. His hands move in rhythm with the stars themselves, pulling, bending, forcing. He pours his rage into the void, and you feel the galaxy shudder. Planets quake, suns flare, moons crack. He laughs, not with joy, but with hunger so vast it threatens to consume him. And then, the breaking point. The Jedi strike back, not with sorcery, not with illusions, but with unity. Fleets rise in defiance, their sabers igniting, their voices chanting in harmony that cuts through the smoke. The Republic rallies, its soldiers standing where they should have fallen, its people refusing to kneel. They see through his tricks, pierce his illusions, strike at his fleets with precision. His deceptions, once flawless, unravel. His empire, once unshakable, trembles. The stars he bends begin to recoil. Suns flare too bright, too hot, slipping beyond his control. His own power betrays him, burning his ships, scorching his armies, cracking his throne. His gamble turns to ruin. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because every time you thought you had seen the worst, the Sith found new ways to break the galaxy, and yet sometimes their arrogance burned brighter than their fire. You see him in the end, still cloaked in fire, still standing tall, but his laughter fading, his voice cracking, his illusions collapsing. His fleets scatter, his armies fall silent, his empire shatters. He gambled everything, and he lost. His ambition carried him to the edge of the stars, and his arrogance cast him into ruin. But do not think him gone. Sith never vanish. They linger, they whisper, they remain. Sato retreats into exile, his body broken, his dreams ashes, but his name carved into stone. He waits, plotting, whispering, promising that one day his gamble will not fail. One day his fire will burn again. The galaxy breathes for a moment. The Jedi believe they have won. The Republic believes it has survived. But you know better. You feel it in the silence after the fire. You hear it in the whispers of the tombs on Korriban. You see it in the shadows stretching long across the stars. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. You close your eyes, and you hear his voice, soft now, but sharp, certain. I remain. And when you open them, you see the sands of Korriban again, and you realize, another storm is already gathering. You open your eyes, and the world is gray. The air is heavy with ash, falling in slow spirals across the red sands of Korriban until the desert is no longer crimson, but bone white. The sky itself has dimmed, a pale, bloodless sheet stretched overhead. The winds that once howled with fury now crawl like a wounded animal, carrying only the stench of smoke and rot. You step forward, and every crunch beneath your boots is not stone, not sand, bodies. The massacre has ended, but the silence is worse than the screams. You walk through what was once a valley of power, where drums beat like thunder and chants shook the tombs of the ancients. Now the drums are shattered, the banners burned, the voices silenced. The ground is blackened with fire, streaked with trails of blood baked into the stone. The tomb doors hang broken, their carvings scorched, their warnings ignored. Inside, the sarcophagi overflow, not with relics but with corpses, stacked, twisted, lifeless. Sith warriors, Republic soldiers, Jedi knights, none spared, none honored. The air burns your throat. The scent is thick, charred flesh, scorched metal, and something sour, like blood left too long in the sun. You taste it with every breath, and you know it will never leave your mouth. The silence presses against your ears, but beneath it, you swear you hear whispers. The dead are not gone. They murmur beneath the sands, their voices carried by the Force, by the hatred that still lingers. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even in victory, the ground beneath your feet tasted like failure. You see them, the Jedi who survived. Their cloaks are tattered, their sabers burned out, their faces hollow. They kneel in the sand, their hands pressed to the earth as though in prayer. But their voices do not rise. They are too tired, too broken, too uncertain. They whisper among themselves that it is over, that the Sith are gone, that this slaughter has finally ended the darkness. But you see their eyes, and you know they do not believe their own words. The Republic soldiers move through the ruins, collecting their dead, stacking bodies into pyres that smoke against the pale sky. You hear their voices crack as they call names, their hands trembling as they close eyes that will never open again. Some laugh softly, brokenly, at the absurdity of survival. Others cry without sound, their faces streaked with ash that mixes with their tears. The fires they build are meant to cleanse, but they cannot burn away the memory of what was lost. And still, the tombs remain. You walk deeper into the valley, past the shattered spires and burned banners, into the caves carved into the cliffs. The walls glow faintly, not with fire, but with something older. Runes etched in blood and shadow still pulse, faint but steady, like veins refusing to die. The air is colder here, damp with the smell of stone and decay. You feel the weight of the dead pressing against you, heavy and suffocating, forcing your steps slower. You hear whispers again, louder now, clearer. They speak not in words, but in hunger. Hunger for vengeance, hunger for survival, hunger for return. You realize then what the Jedi do not. The Sith are not so easily destroyed. Their bodies may burn, their fleets may fall, their armies may scatter, but their essence lingers. Their shadows stretch long, curling into every crack of stone, every grain of sand, every breath of air. Korriban itself remembers. The planet is not just soil and rock. It is memory. It is wound. And wounds do not heal so easily. You step into a tomb and see the aftermath there too. Corpses piled against the walls, sabers scattered across the floor, scorch marks carved into the stone. The battle raged even here, among the dead, as though the living fought to impress the shadows of those who came before. You run your hand across the wall, and it burns, not with heat, but with energy. The force thrums here, louder than before, sharper, angrier. You feel it coil into your arm, your chest, your thoughts. It does not soothe, it tempts, it promises, it whispers, and in that whisper you hear the truth. The massacre was not an end, it was a seed buried deep in the ash and blood, waiting to grow. Outside, the Jedi prepare to leave. They tell themselves it is finished, that the Sith will not rise again. They speak of rebuilding temples, of bringing peace back to the Republic, of healing wounds too deep to name. They believe the silence means safety, they believe the ash means finality. But you know better. You see the way the shadows twist when the light fades. You hear the whispers in the tombs when the air falls still. You feel the hunger that has not been quenched, only buried. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you mistook silence for peace. The pyres burn through the night, their flames stretching into the pale sky. The Jedi leave offerings of stone and chant prayers that fall flat against the wind, but the tombs do not listen, the shadows do not retreat, the whispers do not fade. And the fires die, the ash will remain. When the Jedi leave, the hunger will grow. And somewhere, beneath the sands, beneath the tombs, beneath the silence, the Sith wait. They are patient, they are cruel, they are inevitable. You close your eyes, and you hear it. Soft at first, then louder. A chant. A promise. We remain. When you open them, the valley is still gray, the tombs still broken, the pyres still burning. But you know the truth. The massacre at Korriban was not an ending. It was the beginning of another storm. And when it comes, the galaxy will bleed again. You open your eyes, and the galaxy feels quieter than it should. The fires of war have dimmed, the screams have faded, the ash has settled into the cracks of forgotten worlds. The Jedi breathe easier, the Republic dares to dream again. But silence is dangerous. Silence is never truly empty. It is the pause before the storm, the breath before the scream. And in that silence, a shadow stirs. A name rises. Exar Kun. At first, you feel only whispers, a faint shiver through the Force, a tremor too small for the Jedi to notice, too distant for the Republic to fear. But when you close your eyes, you hear him clearly, a voice not loud, but sharp, a voice that cuts, a voice that tempts. He speaks forbidden words, words the Jedi swore to bury, words that taste of iron and ash when they pass across your tongue. He does not shout his power into the galaxy. He whispers. And whispers can be more dangerous than fire. You see him walking alone, cloaked not in flame, but in ambition. His steps echo against ancient stone, the air around him heavy with dust and the scent of rot. He runs his fingers along walls carved with runes older than the Republic, their glow faint but insistent, like veins filled with blood that refuses to dry. The halls are quiet, but the quiet is alive. Spirits linger in every corner, eyes unseen pressing against his back, voices sighing in every breath. Most would falter here, most would tremble. But Exar Kun smiles. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because where one of your own should have recoiled in fear, he leaned in closer. He seeks not peace, not balance, not even vengeance. He seeks truth. And truth is cruel. It does not comfort. It does not heal. It destroys illusions. It burns away lies. And when Exar Kun finds it, he drinks it like poison that feels too much like wine. He kneels in the tombs of Korriban, where the ash of massacres still clings to the walls, where the dead never stopped whispering. He listens, and the dead answer. He learns, and the shadows embrace him. He falls, but in the fall, he rises. You see him crown himself in silence, not with iron or bone, but with the weight of names long dead. Nagasado, Frida Nad, Marka Ragnos. Their voices coil into his mind, their teachings carve into his soul. He does not just follow them, he becomes them, a vessel for their hatred, a weapon for their hunger. In the silence of tombs, the Sith are reborn, not in armies, not in fleets, in him. The temples rise slowly, carved into stone with hands that tremble not with weakness, but with fury. The halls are filled not with chants of life, but with screams of sacrifice, the echoes pressed into walls until the stone itself hums with agony. Torches burn green, their smoke filling the air with the scent of decay, thick enough to choke, sharp enough to cut. The ground trembles with every ritual, every whisper, every drop of blood poured into its cracks. Exar Kun stands at the center, his saber glowing not with the calm blue of Jedi discipline, but with the searing crimson of Sith hunger. He bends not just steel, not just flesh, but the Force itself. Illusions crawl from his hands, storms answer his call, shadows twist at his command, and when he raises his voice, it shakes more than the walls, it shakes the galaxy. The Jedi feel it at last, a tremor sharper than before, a shadow heavier, darker, crueler. They gather in temples of polished stone, their voices filled with unease, their hands clasped in prayer. They whisper of imbalance, of danger, of fear, but they cannot see him. They do not know his name. They cannot stop what they cannot face. And that is his strength. He does not fight them openly. He does not march his armies across their worlds. He hides. He builds. He waits. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you always mistook quiet for peace and silence for safety. You watch as he gathers followers. They come not with chains but with choice. Knights who grew eerie of rules. Students who felt caged by discipline. Dreamers who thought the Jedi way too narrow, too blind. He whispers to them and they listen. He promises them freedom, but what he gives them is hunger. He promises them power and they drink it gladly. And when they kneel, they do not kneel as slaves. They kneel as believers. The temples grow louder, the screams become songs, the rituals become storms. You hear the thunder of drums echoing across stone, the clash of blades sharpened in fire, the chants of voices lost to shadows. You smell incense so heavy it suffocates. You taste blood so thick it coats your tongue. You feel the ground tremble with every step he takes, as though the world itself bends beneath him. The Jedi do not yet understand. The Republic does not yet see. But you do. You see him cloaked in silence, his hands raised, his eyes burning brighter than torches, his voice cutting sharper than blades. He does not march. He does not roar. He whispers. And his whispers echo louder than fleets. In the shadows, the Sith return, sharper, crueler, inevitable. You close your eyes, and you hear his voice, low and certain, curling around you like smoke. I am the rebirth. And when you open them, you see the stars trembling, because you know this is only the beginning. You hear the laugh before you see the blade. It cuts through the chamber, sharp and cruel, a sound not of joy but of mockery. It echoes off the stone, mingling with the cries of those who still believe themselves safe. Then the crimson glow ignites, and the room is drenched in firelight. Exar Kun. Once a brother, once a student, once a friend. Now, a monster cloaked in shadows of his own making. And as his saber carves through the air, you realize the truth the Jedi were always too afraid to say. Your greatest enemy is always the one you once called brother. The air is thick with incense, sweet and suffocating, filling your lungs until you choke. The walls tremble with chants long buried, each syllable carved from hunger and rage. You taste iron in the back of your throat, the sharp tang of blood spilled too fast, too easily. The flicker of torches paints the chamber in gold and red, but the light is devoured by the shadows that move with him. Shadows that cling to his heels, shadows that rise from the ground itself. They are not his followers, they are his victims. You see them now. Jedi Knights who once fought beside him, their eyes hollow, their movements twisted, their sabers raised not by choice, but by chains of the Force. He has bound them, not with bonds of steel, not with collars of iron, but with whispers that coil into their veins, with hunger that bends their wills until they are no longer alive, but not yet dead. Shadows bound to his command, they lurch forward, sabers crashing against the blades of their former allies, their mouths silent, but their screams echoing in the Force. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you taught yourself to trust your brother, but it was always your brother who struck first. Kun's laugh cuts through it all, bright as fire, sharp as a blade. He moves with elegance, his double-bladed saber spinning in arcs of crimson light, each swing slicing not just flesh but faith. His enemies fall quickly, but the wounds he leaves behind are deeper than bodies. He cuts into belief, into loyalty, into hope itself. His betrayal spreads wider than his blade. It spreads into the hearts of everyone who thought they knew him. The chamber becomes a furnace. Heat rolls off the walls. Sweat stings your eyes. The stench of charred flesh chokes you. The clash of sabers rings like thunder, each spark falling like stars into the dark. You hear the cries of the betrayed, their voices sharp with disbelief, with grief, with fury. "Brother, why?" they scream, but the question is pointless. He does not answer. He does not need to. His blade is the answer. Kun raises his hand and shadows spill from his fingers. They crawl across the floor, slithering like snakes, wrapping around ankles, arms, throats. The victims choke, their sabers falling from their grasp as the shadows drag them to the ground. Their bodies convulse, their eyes roll back, their voices twist into silence. And then they rise again, empty, bound. Another whisper added to his chorus of the damned. The Jedi realize too late. This is not just battle. This is harvest. You feel the weight of it pressing on your chest. Every death feeds him. Every scream strengthens him. Every betrayal sharpens him. He does not merely kill, he collects. He builds an army not of followers, not of believers, but of the broken. Every ally becomes a slave. Every brother becomes a weapon. Every death becomes his strength. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because your greatest weakness was always your heart. The galaxy burns again. Fleets descend upon helpless worlds, their cannons tearing cities apart, their shadows stretching across fields and oceans. Temples fall, their spires crumbling into ash as the laughter of Kun echoes through the Force. You smell smoke on every wind, taste blood in every drop of rain. You hear screams that stretch across systems, mothers calling for children, children calling for fathers, all silenced by fire. And through it all, you see him. Exar Kun, cloaked in shadows, his blade burning brighter than suns, his eyes reflecting only hunger. He does not march like a general. He does not pray like a Jedi. He dances like a storm, every step leaving fire, every swing leaving silence. He is not just fighting the Jedi, he is undoing them. The Council feels it now, heavy in their temples. They gather in silence, their faces pale, their voices low. They speak of betrayal, of fear, of failure. But beneath their words, you hear something worse. You hear doubt. Doubt in their way. Doubt in their strength. Doubt in their survival. Because if one of their own could fall so far, what does that mean for the rest? Kun's betrayal is not just a blade in the back, it is a wound in the heart of the Jedi, and wounds like that never heal clean. The war spreads faster than fire through dry grass. Worlds fall, armies break, sabers clash in endless battle, blue and green sparks swallowed by crimson storms. Every time a Jedi falls, Kun grows stronger. Every time the Republic falters, his shadow stretches wider. And the laughter never stops. You close your eyes, and you hear it still. That cruel, mocking laugh, echoing in tombs, in temples, in every corner of the Force. You open them, and you see the galaxy burning, Fleets tearing the stars, temples collapsing under the weight of betrayal. The Jedi realized too late. Their greatest enemy was never in the shadows. He was always at their side. And as the fire spreads, you know the truth. The betrayal is not finished. The harvest has only begun. You open your eyes, and the stars are on fire. At first you think it's dawn, the way the horizon glows, streaked with red and gold. But then the light splits, fractures, blossoms into shapes too sharp, too jagged, too cruel to be sunrise. They are ships. Thousands of them, engines screaming like thunder across the void, their cannons already burning rivers into the night. The ground beneath your feet trembles. Not with storms, not with quakes, but with war itself. This is no border conflict, no raid on a forgotten system. This is everything, every lane, every world, every soul dragged into a storm too vast to escape. The great hyperspace war. You taste smoke before you smell it, ash settling thick across your tongue like iron dust. The air grows sour, sharp with the tang of ozone, with the bitter scent of ships burning as they fall through skies already torn apart. Hyperlanes, those rivers of light that once connected the galaxy, become rivers of blood. Each streak of light carries not hope, not exploration, but fleets of death. Sith armadas spill from the lanes, their shadows stretching across stars, their cannons vomiting fire into worlds that never even knew their names. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because by the time you reach the battlefield had already swallowed entire systems. You see the Republic scramble. Fleets leap from Coruscant, from Corellia, from Alderaan. Generals bark orders through static-filled channels, their voices cracking with desperation. "Hold the lines!" they cry, but the lines are already burning. Jedi race to meet them, sabers blazing, cloaks torn by the wind of war. Their voices rise in chants of courage, but beneath the surface, you hear it. The doubt, the fear, the knowledge that they are already too late. The Sith strike without mercy. Worlds near the rim collapse first. Cities are consumed by firestorms. Temples, split open like fruit struck by lightning. You hear children crying in alleys filled with smoke, their voices swallowed by the roar of engines above. You see oceans boil as orbital bombardments rain fire into waves. You feel the tremor in the Force as millions die in a single instant, their screams flooding your chest until you cannot breathe. And always, you see the Sith Lords standing at the center. Crowns of jagged iron upon their heads, sabers burning crimson, voices chanting in languages not meant for mortal throats. They stretch their hands, and shadows leap across the void. Entire fleets crumble beneath their sorcery, illusions twisting enemy ships into each other, lightning splitting through shields as though they were paper. To fight them is not only to fight armies. It is to fight the Force itself, twisted into something sharp, something cruel, something endless. The Jedi push back. You hear their sabers clash, blue and green against endless red, sparks flying in showers across steel decks. You smell scorched metal where blades cut too deep, taste blood where screams fill the air. You feel the heat of engines exploding, the sharp sting of shrapnel slicing through flesh. And through it all, you sense their desperation. They fight not just for victory. They fight for survival. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because every battle felt like the last one you'd ever fight. The war stretches across months, years. It feels like lifetimes. Hyperlanes become graveyards. Ships drift lifeless through the void, their hulls torn open, their crews frozen in silence. Worlds vanish from maps, their surfaces scorched black, their cities erased until only ash remains. Refugees flood the core, their eyes hollow, their voices broken, carrying stories too horrific to believe, but too true to deny. And still, the Sith press on. Their fleets move like firestorms, fast and merciless, leaving nothing behind but silence. Their lords carve their will into stone and blood, demanding not loyalty but fear. You see worlds kneel, not because they wish to, but because there is nothing left standing. But the Republic is not broken yet. The Jedi are not gone. Fleets rally at last, their engines blazing across the stars. Worlds that once stood alone now stand together, their banners flying side by side. You hear their chants, their vows, their prayers, rising against the storm. And when they fight not just with sabers and cannons, but with hope sharp enough to wound the shadows themselves. The battles are endless. One rages above a desert world, sandstorms whipped into the sky by ships crashing into the surface. Another tears across an ocean planet, waves rising higher than mountains as fleets burn into the depths. Another still unfolds in the skies. Above Coruscant itself, its towers lit by fire, its skies torn open by war. You see Jedi leap into the fray, their sabers carving through waves of Sith, their voices steady even as their bodies break. You see Republic soldiers hold lines with blasters burning too hot to grip, their faces set with fury that refuses to yield. The war is a wound carved into the galaxy, and it bleeds without end. But even in the darkest storms you hear it, the whispers. The Sith are powerful, but they are also arrogant. Their hunger pushes them too far, too fast. Their fleets stretch thin. Their armies bleed themselves dry. Their sorcery consumes more than it can control. And slowly, quietly, the Republic begins to push back. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even in the smallest victories, you could never shake the fear that it was all a trick, that the shadows wanted you to believe you were winning. You see the final battles gathering, fleets converging, sabers igniting, the Force itself trembling as though it knows the storm must break. The great hyperspace war is not over yet. The blood still flows. The fire still burns, the screams still echo across the void, but you can feel it in the Force. The end is coming. You close your eyes, and you hear the drums of war, pounding across the stars, echoing in your chest until your heart matches their rhythm. You open them, and you see fleets burning, worlds breaking, Jedi falling. And you know, the great hyperspace war has only just begun to show its cost. You open your eyes, and the galaxy is burning. Not just the fringe worlds, not just the hyperlanes, not just the cities where the Sith banners once rose high. The very temples of the Force itself are aflame. The air tastes of ash, bitter and sharp, stinging your tongue until it feels like you are breathing smoke instead of air. The skies glow red, not from dawn or sunset, but from fleets bleeding fire into the void. The ground quakes beneath you. Not from storms, but from temples collapsing, stone cracking like bones under too much weight. And in the center of it all, you hear him. Exar Kun. His laughter, sharp and cruel, rolls across the battlefield like thunder. It is not the laugh of joy, but of arrogance, of someone who has bent the galaxy to his will and believes himself untouchable. His voice is carried in the Force, echoing in the ears of Jedi, Sith, soldier, and civilian alike. You cannot stop me. But you feel it in the Force. You know the tide is turning. The Jedi are gathering. Not scattered, not divided, not silenced. Together. Their chants rise across systems, woven not from hunger, not from arrogance, but from resolve. Voices from 1,000 temples hum in harmony, cutting through the smoke and fire. Sabers ignite across the galaxy, blue and green flaring against the crimson tide. The Republic, broken and bloodied, surges forward one final time, and for the first time in years, Exar Kun's laugh falters. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you never knew if this time, this war, this enemy would finally be the one to break you. And yet, you kept standing. You see him retreat to his stronghold on Yavin 4, a jungle world where vines choke stone, and the air itself tastes damp with rot. Massive temples rise from the earth, carved from stone that glows faintly red at dusk, their walls etched with runes that pulse like veins filled with fire. The air hums, with dark energy, so thick you feel it press against your chest, heavy, suffocating. Here, Exar Kun believes himself safe. Here, he believes his power absolute. Inside, the halls are filled with the screams of sacrifice. His followers, desperate and terrified, kneel before altars as their lifeblood is spilled into cauldrons that burn green. Shadows crawl along the walls, whispering, feeding him strength. You hear the chants he leads, words twisted into knives, promises sharpened into chains. His saber burns brighter than ever, crimson light reflecting in the stone, searing into the eyes of those who dare look. But outside, the Jedi arrive. Hundreds of ships streak through the skies, their engines a roar that drowns the jungle's endless cries. The ground trembles beneath their descent, and when their boots hit the soil, the force itself seems to steady. You hear their chants rise, steady, strong, unified. Blue and green sabers ignite, their hum filling the air like a song of defiance. The Republic's soldiers march beside them, armor scorched, faces grim, but their eyes fixed forward. For the first time in years, hope is louder than fear. The battle is chaos. The jungle burns, vines ignited by blaster fire, trees collapsing in showers of sparks. The air is thick with smoke and screams, the ground slick with blood and mud. Sith followers rush into the fray, their sabers clashing against the Jedi's, their chants drowned by the roars of war. You feel the heat of fire on your skin, the sharp sting of rain as storms break overhead, the metallic taste of ozone as lightning splits the sky. Every step forward feels impossible, every scream behind you a reminder of how close death is, and still, the Jedi push. Inside the temple, Exar Kun rages. His laughter twists into screams, his voice echoing through the halls as he realizes the tide is no longer his. His followers fall one by one, their bodies littering the stone floors, their shadows dissipating into nothing. The walls tremble as the Jedi close in, their chants shaking the stone, their sabers cutting through the darkness. The temple itself groans as though alive, its stones weeping with the weight of centuries, its shadows trembling at the thought of what is coming. You see him at last, standing before the great altar, his form cloaked in fire and shadow. His saber burns crimson, his eyes glow yellow, his voice splits the air with fury. He raises his hands, and the force itself bends, the walls shattering outward, the air filling with shards of stone. Jedi are thrown back, soldiers crushed, screams echoing through the chamber. His power is still vast, still terrible. For a moment, you believe he cannot be stopped. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when the galaxy stood against him, one Sith could still feel like the end of everything. But the Jedi do not falter. They rise, bloodied and broken, but chanting louder, stronger. They gather in circles around the temple, their voices weaving into the force, binding it, shaping it, sharpening it. They do not fight him with blades, they fight him with will. They pour their strength into the stone, into the air, into the very ground, until the temple itself becomes their weapon. Their voices shake the jungle, their chants rattle the stars, their resolve presses against him like a tidal wave. Exar Kun screams, his voice breaking, his arrogance splintering. He feels the weight pressing against him, the light burning into his shadows, the chants breaking his whispers. Desperate, he turns to the only refuge he has left, not escape, not surrender, sorcery. He pours his soul out of his body, twisting it into spirit, into shadow, into something that cannot be killed. His flesh burns away, his laugh echoes one last time, and his essence seeps into the stone of the temple. You hear it, the hiss of shadows binding to rock, the groan of stone sealing him inside. You smell it, burnt flesh and incense, acrid and suffocating. You feel it, the chill of something wrong, something eternal, something unfinished. Exar Kun is trapped, bound in the very stone he once ruled. The temple hums with his presence, the walls glow faintly red, the air forever heavy with his hunger. The Jedi collapse, their bodies trembling, their voices hoarse. They have won, but victory tastes like ash. The jungle is scorched, the temple's ruined, the Republic's dead litter the soil. And though Exar Kun no longer stands, his presence lingers. The stone whispers with his voice, the shadows hum with his hunger. He is not gone, he is waiting. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even in victory, the enemy always found a way to remain. You close your eyes and you hear his laughter, faint now, muffled by stone but still sharp, still certain. You have not defeated me. I endure. When you open them, you see the smoke rising, the bodies burning, the temples broken. The Jedi walk away, their heads bowed, their voices silent. They tell themselves it is over. They tell themselves he is gone. But you know better. You feel it in the stone, in the shadows, in the silence. Exar Kun is bound, but not destroyed, and one day the galaxy will pay for leaving him alive. You open your eyes, and for the first time in years, the galaxy is quiet. No fleets burning across the stars, no temples collapsing in fire, no chants of war echoing through the Force. Just silence. And in that silence, you almost dare to believe it is over. The Sith are gone. The Republic stands. The Jedi breathe. But silence is never what it seems. Silence is never empty. The air tastes different now, thinner, cleaner, though it carries the faint tang of ash that will never leave. The stars shine brighter, unobscured by the fire of endless battles. Planets rebuild, their cities rising again, though the streets are still littered with rubble and the soil is still stained with blood. Markets reopen, children laugh, songs return to taverns and temples. On the surface the galaxy heals, but beneath it, in the cracks of the Force, something festers. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when the fires died, you never trusted the quiet. The Sith are scattered, their fleets shattered, their armies broken, their temples toppled. Their names are no longer shouted in triumph but cursed in whispers, spat like poison by survivors who saw too much. On Coruscant, senators declare victory, their voices echoing through grand halls rebuilt from rubble. They raise banners, give speeches, write new laws. They promise the people that the darkness has passed, that the nightmare is over. But their voices tremble, their hands shake, their eyes dart to shadows they cannot name. Because they too remember, and deep down, they know what you know. The Sith are never truly gone. You feel it in the Force, whispers that linger when the halls fall quiet, shadows that stretch longer than they should when the sun sets. A weight in the air, subtle, sharp, always pressing. The Jedi sense it too. They sit in their temples, sabers at their sides, voices low with unease. They tell themselves, too, hey, have won, but they meditate longer now, search the currents of the Force with heavier hearts, find no peace in the silence. They remind themselves of balance, of patience, of vigilance. But beneath their words, you hear doubt. You walk through the ruins of Korriban, and you see what the Jedi refuse to see. The tombs still hum with power. The runes still glow faint red in the dark. The air still tastes of iron and ash. The ground still trembles with hunger. The Sith are not gone from here. They never will be. The sand itself remembers their names. The stone itself carries their voices. The Jedi call it cursed. Survivors call it haunted. But you know the truth. Korriban is alive, and it is waiting. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even in victory, your enemy's home was eternal. The Sith that remain are not lords anymore. They are ghosts, survivors, fragments of broken empires scattered across the stars. Some hide in shadows, their crowns shattered, their blades dulled, their voices little more than whispers in forgotten caves. Others pretend to vanish, slipping into disguises, hiding their power, teaching their knowledge only in secret. A few linger as spirits, bound to tombs, their rage fueling them long after their bodies turn to dust. And yet, each fragment hums with the same truth. They wait, they endure, they whisper. The galaxy celebrates, blind to the truth. Worlds once scarred by fleets rebuild towers higher than before. Farmers plant fields over craters, their crops drinking the blood of soldiers long buried beneath. Children play among ruins, their laughter bright against the silence of history. For them, the war is story now, memory fading, lessons softened. They do not fear shadows, they chase them in games. But you know what games become when whispers take root. The Republic swells with confidence. Senators grow louder, their chambers filled with endless speeches, their pride sharpened into arrogance. They believe the Sith were an ending, not a pause. They shift their gaze inward, bickering over trade, over power, over wealth. Their eyes turn from the stars, their hearts grow heavy with greed. They forget what it felt like when the shadows rose. They forget how fragile peace always is. And so, the silence deepens. You feel it again, sharper now, a tremor in the Force, faint but steady. The Sith thrive in silence. They breathe in doubt. They drink from arrogance. They curl into the cracks of complacency, waiting for the moment to strike. You hear their whispers at the edges of your mind, promises of power, of vengeance, of inevitability. The galaxy has turned away. The Jedi are weary. The Republic is blind. And the Sith are patient. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because every time you closed your eyes, you heard your enemy laughing in the dark. The years pass. The stars turn. The silence stretches long, too long, and the galaxy forgets. The war becomes history. The Sith become legend. The truth becomes myth. Children learn of Jedi in songs, of Sith in cautionary tales told by fireside. They do not know the ash that once choked the skies, the screams that once echoed in every lane of hyperspace. They do not remember what it felt like when the shadows marched. And forgetting is the greatest gift the Sith could ever be given. You walk again through the ruins of Korriban. The tombs stand silent, their doors sealed, their carvings worn by wind and time. The valley is quiet, the air still. But when you close your eyes, you hear it. Faint, steady, endless. The whispers, the voices of lords long dead. We remain. You open your eyes and the silence feels heavier now. Not empty. Never empty. Silence is a mask. Silence is a weapon. Silence is the soil where shadows grow. The Sith fade, yes, but they fade into waiting, into plotting, into silence that hums with hunger. And one day, that silence will break again. You close your eyes, and you hear the Force shiver, as if warning you. You open them, and you see the stars. They shine bright now, clean and clear. But you know the truth. Shadows are already stretching toward them. The galaxy breathes, but the breath is shallow. The peace is thin. The silence is heavy. And the Sith are not gone. You open your eyes, and the stars themselves seem to bend around him. At first, there is only silence. A figure at the edge of the galaxy, standing against the endless dark. His cloak whips in the wind of some forgotten world. His mask hides his face, and yet you feel his presence. Heavy, unstoppable. His saber ignites, a line of light so sharp, so alive, that it feels brighter than the stars above. This is not just another warrior. This is Revan. And whether you know it or not, everything is about to change. The air carries the scent of burning fuel, metallic and bitter, as though fleets have already been set aflame before the war has even begun. The Force itself ripples around him, thick and unsteady, like a current before a storm. His footsteps echo against stone as he moves forward, not hurried, not hesitant, but inevitable. Each step carries weight, as if worlds move with him. You feel it in your chest, in your breath, in your bones. Revan is not just a man, he is momentum. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because sometimes your greatest enemy began as your brightest hope. Once, he stood among the Jedi. His voice rang through temples, clear and passionate, his blade raised not in defiance, but in defense. You remember the war against the Mandalorians, how the galaxy bled, how the Republic begged for salvation. The Jedi Council hesitated, their voices calm, their patience endless. But patience does not stop blood. Patience does not end war. Revan did what they would not. He led. He fought. He won. The soldiers followed him not because they had to, but because they believed. He walked through fire, through smoke, through fleets torn apart, and every step he took turned despair into resolve. He wore no crown, sat on no throne, and yet to them he was already more than a leader. He was destiny. His presence filled the air like thunder, his words sparked like lightning, his blade cut like a storm. To march behind Revan was to feel invincible. To fight beside him was to believe victory was already yours. But there is a cost to carrying a galaxy on your shoulders. You feel it in the way his voice hardens. You see it in the way his eyes narrow. You taste it in the bitterness of his victories. The Mandalorian wars end, but Revan does not stop. He cannot stop. The silence that follows feels wrong to him, like a wound that refuses to heal. He looks into the void and hears something no one else hears. Whispers, shadows, promises, the Sith. And so, he follows. You walk with him into the unknown. Hyperlanes stretch into silence, stars grow distant, and worlds fade behind you. The Republic cannot see where he goes. The Jedi do not understand, but you feel it. Each step deeper into the dark, his presence grows heavier, sharper. The air chills, the Force trembles. You smell stone soaked in blood, hear whispers curling in languages not spoken in millennia. He finds something out there, in the cracks of forgotten empires. Something that should have remained buried. You feel his hunger. It grows like fire starved too long for fuel. He does not just want to protect anymore. He wants to control. He does not just want to fight the Sith. He wants to be what they fear. His mask hides his face now, a symbol carved from iron, a barrier between what he was and what he has become. When he speaks, his voice carries not just words but weight. His saber ignites, and it is no longer the blade of a knight. It is the blade of a conqueror. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes when you looked at your brother, you saw the Sith staring back. The galaxy shudders as he returns, not as the savior it once knew, but as something else entirely. His fleets move like storms, precise and merciless. Worlds kneel not because they want to, but because they cannot stand against him. He does not destroy recklessly. He conquers with purpose. Every system taken becomes another chain. Every army won becomes another weapon. His power spreads like wildfire, too fast, too hot, too inevitable to contain. And yet, when you look at him, when you feel him through the Force, you sense something deeper than ambition. You sense doubt. He believes the Republic is weak, the Jedi blind, the Sith dangerous beyond measure. He believes only through him can order be restored. You wonder, is he a tyrant, or is he the only one who truly sees the storm coming? You cannot answer. You can only watch as his shadow grows longer across the stars. His hunger is endless. You see it in his battles. Fleets burn, their wreckage falling into the atmospheres of innocent worlds. Soldiers scream, their voices lost to the roar of cannons. Jedi fall, their sabers dimming one by one. Every victory feeds his resolve, but it also feeds something darker. His mask never comes off. His voice grows colder. His presence sharpens until it cuts. The man who once fought for peace now fights for control. The man who once saved the galaxy now bends it to his will. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes you couldn't tell if you were fighting the dark, or if you were fighting someone who thought he was saving you. The war escalates. You see him standing at the heart of it all, cloak whipping in the wind of burning ships, saber blazing brighter than suns. His enemies call him a tyrant. His soldiers call him a savior. The Force itself trembles, torn between light and dark. And when you look at him, you feel both. His hunger, his doubt, his fury, his brilliance. He is not just a Sith. He is not just a Jedi. He is something else entirely. Something the galaxy has never seen before. The Council whispers his name in fear. The Republic curses him in anger. His enemies spit his title with hatred, but his followers, his soldiers, his acolytes, his people, they chant it with reverence. Revan. The name becomes legend before the man is even gone, and still, he hungers. You feel it pressing against your chest, sharp and suffocating. He does not stop. He will not stop. He cannot stop. His mask gleams in the firelight. His saber hums like a storm. His voice carries like thunder. The galaxy bends before him, and yet he looks always beyond, into shadows deeper than you can see. And you realize, this is only the beginning. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because when you looked into Revan's eyes, you saw not just a man, you saw the future, and it terrified you. You close your eyes and you hear the chants of his armies, the roar of his fleets, the screams of his enemies. You open them and you see his shadow stretching across the stars, his mask gleaming, his blade burning. And you know, Revan has risen. You open your eyes and the galaxy is already on fire. At first, you think it is the Sith again. The familiar taste of ash, the shadow in the Force, the fleet spilling across the stars like a flood you cannot hold back. But this storm is different. The ships are not red with Sith banners, nor are they cloaked in sorcery and whispers. They are iron, brutal, sharp-edged, hammered together like weapons forged not to intimidate, but to kill. Their engines scream not with elegance, but with fury. Their warriors descend not cloaked in mysticism, but wrapped in beskar, faces hidden behind helmets that gleam like death itself. The Mandalorians. Their boots strike worlds like meteors, their fleets carve through Republic space like knives through soft flesh. They do not fight for whispers, they do not fight for thrones. They fight for the joy of it, the glory, the proving, the endless storm of war. Cities crumble under their bombardments, oceans burn as their ships hammer the surface, skies fill with fire as fleets clash. And always, always you hear their chants, rhythmic, fierce, the heartbeat of conquest. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because even when the Sith were quiet, someone else always rose to burn the stars. The Republic reels, worlds fall one by one, their governments shattered, their people enslaved, their streets drowned in fire. Senators shout in their grand halls, voices sharp, words empty. They promise safety, but their fleets break like glass before beskar. They send soldiers, but soldiers are not enough, and still, the Jedi Council waits. They sit in their temples, their voices calm, their patience endless. The Force will guide us, they say. Do not act in haste. But while they wait, entire systems are wiped away. You feel the anger boiling in the young knights. They pace temple halls, fists clenched, eyes sharp with fury. They hear the screams in the Force, the cries of the dying, the roar of fleets falling into silence. They beg to fight, to save, to act. But the council shakes its head, serene and stubborn. Patience, caution, balance. The words ring hollow when cities burn. The words feel like betrayal when you know you could act. And then, a voice rises. Clear, strong, relentless. Revan. He will not wait. He cannot wait. He gathers those who share his fury, those who feel the fire in their chest, those who hear the cries of the dying and cannot sit silent. They march from the temples, their cloaks torn by wind, their sabers burning like torches in the dark. They do not walk with the council's blessing, they walk in defiance. And behind them, soldiers rally, refugees cheer, entire fleets rise again, carried not by senators, but by one voice, one presence. Revan's. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes, doing what was right meant breaking every vow you swore. The war ignites. You see it blaze across the galaxy, system after system becoming battlefield, graveyard, pyre. Mandalorians descend in waves, their armor gleaming, their weapons hissing, their chants shaking the skies. Republic forces meet them head-on, their blasters burning too hot to hold, their ships trembling under the strain of endless battle. And in the center of it all, Revan. His saber arcs like lightning, his mask hides his face, his voice carries like thunder. He does not fight to hold ground, he fights to win. The battles are chaos. One unfolds on the surface of Cathar, where oceans run red with blood, the air filled with the smell of burning flesh, the cries of the slaughtered carried on every wave. Another burns across Malachor 5, its skies torn apart by fleets so vast they blot out the stars, its surface fractured by weapons that should never have been unleashed. You taste the ash on your tongue, you feel the tremor in the ground beneath your feet. You hear the thunder of endless war drums. And all the while in the Force, you feel something else, something beneath the Mandalorian storm. A whisper, a shadow, a hunger. It is not their voice, it is not their will, but it guides them, feeds them, sharpens them. The Sith. They are here, not in armies, but in whispers. Behind the helmets and fire, you feel the dark hand steering the storm. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you thought you knew your enemy, there was always another shadow behind them. The war twists Revan. Every victory demands a cost. Every battle feeds his hunger. His saber burns brighter. His mask grows colder. His presence heavier. He no longer fights only for the Republic. He fights for control, for order, for a galaxy remade in his image. Soldiers chant his name louder than any generals. Refugees kneel when he passes, their eyes filled with desperate faith. Even the Jedi who follow him whisper their doubts, but cannot turn away. His victories are undeniable, his brilliance unquestionable, his power unstoppable. And yet, you see the cost. You see it in the hollow eyes of the soldiers who survive his campaigns. You hear it in the silence of the worlds he saves, their people too broken to cheer, their streets too scarred to rebuild. You feel it in the Force, in the tremor that deepens every time he raises his blade. He is winning, but with every step, he walks further from the light. The Mandalorians rage, but even they cannot stand forever against him. Their fleets falter, their chants weaken, their worlds burn in turn. And when the end comes, it comes not with a duel, not with surrender, but with annihilation. Malachor 5. The battle to end all battles. Revan's hand hovers over the trigger of a weapon no one should have ever created, a weapon that will not just destroy the enemy, it will consume everything. The planet trembles, the skies scream, the Force itself shudders as the mass shadow generator activates. Fleets collapse into themselves, ships crushed like paper, soldiers screaming as they vanish into nothing. The ground splits, the air tears, the very fabric of the world fractures. Malachor becomes a wound, a scar carved into the galaxy, a reminder that some victories are worse than defeat. And yet, Revan wins. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes to save the galaxy, you had to break it first. You stand in the silence that follows. The battlefield is gone, reduced to a graveyard of shattered ships and broken stone. The air is heavy with dust, metallic with blood, sharp with the scent of ozone. The Force trembles still, wounded, unsteady. The Republic breathes again. The Mandalorians are broken, their leaders dead, their fleets scattered, their chants silenced. The war is over. But when you look at Revan, you know it is not peace that follows. It is only the beginning. His mask hides his face. His saber still burns. His presence fills the air like a storm waiting to break. He has seen too much. He has lost too much. And in his silence, in the way he stares into the void, you feel it, the Sith whispers. They are louder now, sharper, closer. You close your eyes, and you hear his voice, cold and certain. Never again will the galaxy be left unprepared. You open them, and you see his shadow stretching across the stars, darker than ever, heavier than ever, inevitable. The Mandalorian wars have ended, but Revan's war has just begun. You open your eyes, and the mask is no longer the face of a savior, it is the face of something else. At first it feels subtle, just a shift, a tremor, a pause in the Force. But then the silence grows heavier, pressing down like a storm cloud before it bursts. The man who once spoke with fire in his chest now speaks with shadows in his throat. His name, Revan, no longer sounds like a hero's banner. It sounds like a curse, whispered too low to ignore, too heavy to deny. His mask turns. The T-shaped visor gleams in the firelight of burning worlds, reflecting crimson streaks from sabers that hum in endless conflict. His cloak stirs with winds carried by fleets tearing through skies, and when he raises his blade, it is not the blade of the Republic anymore. It is not the blade of justice. It is the blade of conquest. You feel the shift in the Force, a wound splitting open, a new tide rising. Revan has become something else. Revan has become Sith. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because the line between your greatest champion and your greatest enemy was thinner than a whisper. The galaxy gasps. Soldiers who once chanted his name hesitate, their voices catching in their throats. Some stay, drawn to his strength, their loyalty no longer to a republic, but to the man himself. Others falter, their faith shattering as they realize the truth, that the savior they followed has become the storm they now fear. But fear is not enough to stop him. Fear feeds him. You feel his voice ripple through the Force, low, commanding, inevitable. His words are not shouted. They do not need to be. They sink into the bones of those who hear them, seeding doubt, twisting loyalty, sharpening hunger. His followers kneel, not because they are weak, but because they believe in him. They believe in his vision. They believe in his promise that the Republic is broken, the Jedi are blind, and only through his rule will the galaxy survive. And maybe, just maybe, they're right. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes, you weren't sure if your enemy was wrong. The Council whispers in panic. Their voices, once calm, tremble now with fear. They call him traitor, fallen, damned. They call him Sith. But their words feel hollow, powerless, too late. Their patience has failed them. Their caution has betrayed them. And now the galaxy pays the price. Their brightest night has become their darkest enemy. You see him gather fleets, not stolen, not seized, but given. Soldiers march beneath his banner willingly. Jedi kneel before him, their sabers turning red as they swear themselves to his cause. He does not need to take. He inspires, he commands, he bends. His presence fills the air like thunder. His will wraps around throats like chains. He is not just a Sith Lord, he is a Sith Emperor in all but name. The war changes, no longer Republic versus Mandalorians, no longer defense versus conquest. Now it is Jedi versus Jedi. Brother against brother, master against student. Sabers clash not only in battlefields but in temples, in council chambers, in halls once filled with silence and meditation. The order fractures, torn apart by the shadow of one man, Revan. The air tastes of ozone, bitter and sharp, as blades meet across war-torn decks. You smell burnt stone as temples collapse under the weight of betrayal. You hear the screams of Jedi who fall, not only to death, but to temptation. Their voices crack as they pledge themselves to him, as they raise their sabers against the very friends who once trained beside them. The galaxy bleeds, and the Force itself shudders with every betrayal, every scream, every whisper of his name. And in the midst of it all, you feel the pull, the doubt, the question that gnaws at every Jedi who still stands against him. What if he's right? The Council hesitated while worlds grinned. The Republic faltered while systems fell. Revan acts, Revan wins, Revan saves. Even if his methods scorch the galaxy, his results are undeniable. Is that not what the Jedi were meant to do? To protect, to save, to end suffering no matter the cost? That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because sometimes the dark side sounded a lot like the truth. You see him again, standing at the heart of a battlefield, his mask reflecting fire, his blade glowing crimson. Around him, Jedi fall, not because they are weak, but because they hesitate, because they question, because they still cling to rules that broke long ago. His strikes are decisive, his will absolute, his presence suffocating. Every move is a reminder that he was once one of them, that he knows their weaknesses, that he knows their doubts. He is not just fighting them, he is unmaking them. The Republic trembles, its senators frantic, their voices drowned in fear. Fleets shatter, armies break, worlds kneel. The Jedi Order fractures further, its halls echoing with silence where students once trained, its temples dim where sabers once blazed. The galaxy shifts, slow but steady, bending to his will, and you realize this is not just a war, this is a rewriting, a remaking, a rebirth. The name Revan spreads across the stars, whispered in awe, in fear, in reverence. To some, he is tyrant, to others, savior, to the Jedi, betrayer, to the Sith, prophet, to the galaxy, inevitable. His mask gleams in the firelight, his blade cuts through history itself, and his shadow stretches farther than any empire before him. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you raised your blade against him, part of you still wanted to believe. You close your eyes, and you hear the silence between battles. You hear the whispers in the Force, his voice among them, steady, certain, commanding. You open them, and you see the galaxy bending, and the Jedi breaking, the Republic bleeding. His mask turns, his name changes, his voice becomes a whisper of the dark side itself, and you know, this is only the beginning. You open your eyes and the galaxy is already broken. There is no clear sky anymore, only the glow of fleets burning across the heavens. Hyperspace lanes, once rivers of trade and discovery, are now scarred red with warships surging toward their next prey. Every broadcast crackles with fear, every star system trembles, every world feels the weight of betrayal pressing down on its chest. You taste the acrid bite of smoke before you smell it, the bitter metallic tang of ash settling on your tongue, as if the very air has been poisoned by the war. This is not Sith against Jedi in shadows, hidden in whispers and knives. This is open. This is unrelenting. This is the Jedi Civil War, and you are standing in the middle of it. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes the blade raised against you wasn't a stranger's. It was the hand you once trained beside. You hear it first, the hum of sabers clashing in temple halls, their song no longer one of training or discipline, but of death. Blue and green ignite against crimson, sparks showering across ancient stone walls. You see faces you once knew, friends, brothers, sisters, twisted not by rage, but by belief. They follow him. They follow Revan. They do not see themselves as fallen. They see themselves as saviors, and when they strike you, they strike not with hate, but with conviction. The temples burn. Stone cracks beneath the thunder of bombardments. Statues that stood for millennia topple into dust, their heads rolling across floors slick with blood. Libraries, once filled with whispers of knowledge, go up in flames, their pages curling into black ash that scatters on the wind. Meditation chambers echo not with silence, but with screams. The heart of the Jedi is shattered, its pulse erratic, its blood spilling out across the galaxy. And above it all, fleets clash. Republic against Republic. Jedi-led against Jedi-led. Brothers commanding fire against brothers commanding fire. Star destroyers fracture in half, their screams of metal echoing into the void as thousands of voices vanish in an instant. Escape pods streak through burning skies like comets, few ever reaching safety. Entire worlds become graveyards of metal, their oceans littered with wreckage, their fields filled with smoldering husks of once proud ships. Revan stands at the heart of it all. His mask gleams with firelight, his cloak whips with the wind of annihilation. When he raises his blade, armies follow. When he speaks, systems bend. His words are sharp, his presence suffocating, his will unbreakable. He does not fight in shadows. He leads fleets openly. He walks onto battlefields as if he owns them, and in truth, he does. He is not merely a Sith Lord. He is the Sith reborn. And he is not alone. Malak, his apprentice, his brother-in-arms turned executioner. Where Revan is precision, Malak is brutality. His strikes are thunder, his laugh is a storm, his presence is overwhelming. Together they are unstoppable, a blade and its shadow, a storm and its thunder. Worlds crumble before them, fleets scatter, Jedi falter. The Sith no longer hide, they no longer whisper. They stand in the open, crowns forged from blood, thrones built from fire. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because every time you raised your blade, you were not fighting strangers, you were fighting family. You feel the war stretch across years, each one heavier than the last. Planets fall in chains, their governments kneeling, their people broken. The Sith take not only through battle, but through fear, through manipulation, through promises of strength. Entire sectors switch allegiance, their fleets turned against the Republic, their Jedi swayed by whispers of Revan's truth. The galaxy fractures into pieces, its map redrawn by fire. And still, you feel the doubt. The Council calls them traitors. The Republic brands them monsters. But when you stand on the battlefield and see Revan's forces, when you see the order in their chaos, the strength in their conviction, the victories they carve from impossible odds, you wonder, was he wrong? Was he truly the villain? Or was he the only one who saw the truth, that the galaxy, left as it was, would fall again? The Force trembles with uncertainty. Light and dark blur, twist, intertwine. You see Jedi fall not because they are tempted, but because they believe. They lay down their sabers, not in shame, but in devotion, handing them to Revan as if handing over their hearts. And when they rise again, cloaked in shadows, blades turned red, they do not feel lost. They feel found. The war reaches its height above planets you once thought untouchable. Coruscant itself trembles as Revan's fleets brush against its defenses, its towers glowing under the threat of annihilation. Dantooine burns, its fields scorched, its temples left in ruins. Kashyyyk screams as its forests are lit by orbital fire. And in every battle, in every scream, you feel it. The weight of inevitability pressing down on your chest. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even in victory you felt like you were losing. The Civil War cuts deeper than fleets, deeper than worlds. It carves into souls. Jedi doubt their vows. Soldiers desert their posts. Families split, brothers joining opposite sides, sisters meeting each other on the battlefield. The war is not just destruction, it is infection. It spreads through every vein of the galaxy until there is no corner untouched, no breath untainted, no silence unbroken. And then, a flicker of hope, a trap, a moment where the Republic rallies, its fleets burning brighter than they have in years, a plan whispered in shadows, carried by desperate voices, Revan's fleet cornered, his mask glow, aiming one last time in the firelight. Sabers clash, blasters roar, ships explode into silence, and in the chaos, betrayal. Malak turns. Apprentice strikes master, not with loyalty but with hunger, not with faith but with ambition. Revan falls, or so it seems. You feel the tremor in the Force, sharp and violent, like a star tearing itself apart. His presence vanishes, his shadow scatters, his voice falls silent. The galaxy gasps, soldiers cheer, Jedi weep. The Sith still rage, but their storm no longer has its eye. The Council whispers of victory. The Republic dares to believe it can heal, but you know better. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you knew the dark side never truly dies. It only waits. You close your eyes and you hear the silence after the battle. You smell the smoke of burning fleets, the iron tang of blood, the sharp sting of ozone lingering in the air. You open them and you see the galaxy broken, scarred, trembling. Revan is gone. Malak rises in his place, hungrier, crueler, more reckless. And you realize, the Jedi Civil War is not over. It has only just shifted. You open your eyes, and the galaxy trembles beneath a new name. Where once Revan's voice carried across the stars like thunder, now it is silenced, betrayed, broken, vanished into the void. In his place rises another figure, taller, heavier, more brutal. His jaw is gone, carved away by his own choices, replaced with steel that hisses when he breathes. His presence is colder, his strikes heavier, his hunger unrestrained. His name echoes through the galaxy like a curse spat with blood on the tongue. Malak. At first you think it is the same war. Fleets clash, worlds burn, Jedi fall. But you feel the difference in the air, sharp as a blade dragged across your skin. Revan was storm and strategy, every strike calculated, every move inevitable. Malak is fire without control, a hammer striking until there is nothing left to shatter. His rule is not order, it is chaos sharpened into power. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because just when you thought you had survived one monster, another rose from his ashes. Malak takes Revan's throne not with patience, not with subtlety, but with blood. He betrays his master in the heart of battle, seizing fleets that once bent to Revan's will, claiming worlds through fear instead of loyalty. He paints the galaxy in fire, not as a surgeon cutting rot, but as a butcher, reveling in the carnage. His ships blot out skies, his bombardments scorch entire continents. He does not demand allegiance, he demands silence. You smell the acrid stench of burning cities, feel the heat of firestorms that roll across plains, hear the endless thunder of orbital cannons hammering worlds into dust. Refugees flood the stars, their ships packed with hollow-eyed survivors who whisper Malak's name like a death knell. Jedi scramble, Republic fleets stagger, senators bicker in panic. And through it all, Malak laughs, his voice metallic, cruel, reverberating like a broken machine echoing through the void. You stand in the ruins of a Republic outpost. Smoke burns your lungs, the ground still hot from the bombardment. Bodies lie scattered in the dust, armor melted into skin, sabers dim and lifeless in the ash, and above, Malak's flagship looms, a dagger of durasteel casting its shadow over the planet like a god staring down at his prey. You feel his presence pressing against your chest, suffocating, heavy, inevitable. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because every battle felt like standing before a tidal wave with nothing but a torch in your hand. Malak's cruelty sharpens with every victory. He hunts Jedi specifically, targeting temples, ambushing their convoys, tearing through their ranks with joy. He does not just kill them, he breaks them. Some he executes publicly, their screams broadcast across the galaxy. Others he twists with promises of survival, forcing them to betray their vows, their friends, their order. He builds his empire not from stone, not from loyalty, but from bone and fire. But you feel it, deep in the Force, the flaw beneath his fury. Malak is not Revan. He does not inspire loyalty. He does not command devotion. His empire is held together with fear, brittle as glass. His followers kneel, yes, but they kneel trembling, their eyes darting, their hands shaking. Fear fuels them, but fear also cracks them. Even his Sith whisper behind closed doors, wondering how long he can hold the throne, wondering who will rise to take it. And in that silence, in those cracks, the galaxy finds hope again. The Republic rallies, bruised but not broken. Its fleets rebuild, its soldiers return, its senators speak with trembling but determined voices. The Jedi, though scarred, gather their strength, and somewhere, beyond the shadow, a voice stirs, a name the galaxy thought lost, a presence the Force itself refuses to let die. Revan. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because hope always carried with it the taste of fear, that maybe it was too late. The final battles draw near. Malak's fury grows desperate, his strikes more reckless, his cruelty more consuming. Entire planets are leveled not for strategy, but for spite. Entire populations vanish into screams, their voices echoing in the Force like a wound that never heals. His flagship, the Leviathan, becomes a symbol of terror, a blade that cuts across hyperspace, leaving silence in its wake. And then, the moment comes. A duel, sharp and heavy, blades clashing in sparks that light up the dark. Malak stands, his saber red as blood, his steel jaw gleaming. He strikes with fury, with rage, with the weight of every victory he thought unshakable. But across from him stands not fear, not hesitation, not silence. Across from him stands the voice he thought silenced, the shadow he thought betrayed, the name he thought consumed. Revan. The clash is thunder. Each strike shakes the air, each movement tears through stone, each scream rattles the stars. Malak fights with hunger, with desperation, with cruelty sharpened into a blade. But Revan fights with inevitability, every movement precise, every strike heavy with purpose, every step carrying the weight of destiny. You feel it in the Force, the shift, the inevitability, the end. Malak falters. His fury cannot match Revan's resolve. His hunger cannot outlast Revan's will. His cruelty cannot overcome Revan's inevitability. And then, the scream. It echoes across the stars, metallic and broken, sharp enough to slice through silence. Malak falls. His saber clatters to the ground, his body collapsing, his name consumed by shadow. His empire, built on bone and fire, crumbles with him. Fleets scatter, soldiers surrender, worlds breathe again. The Sith Lord who ruled through fear vanishes into silence, his voice drowned. Ed in the void he once sought to command. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when victory came, it was born from ashes, from screams, from wounds that never healed. You close your eyes, and you hear the echoes fading, the roar of fleets silenced, the screams of worlds quieting, the heavy thrum of Malak's presence gone. You open them, and you see the galaxy scarred, broken, trembling. Malak is gone. Revan has returned. The Republic breathes again, but the shadows have not vanished. They never do. You feel them in the corners of the Force, whispering, waiting, promising. The Sith may fall, but the dark always lingers. And somewhere in that silence, beyond the ashes, another voice begins to stir. You open your eyes, and the stars themselves feel wrong. At first, you think it is distance. The unknown regions stretch beyond the maps you trust, hyperspace lanes twisted, broken, shattered like glass scattered across a floor. The air tastes stale, sharp, metallic, as if every breath you take has passed through the lungs of the dead. But it is not the stars that are broken. It is something deeper, something older, something that waits. You hear them first. Whispers. Not the scattered cries of fallen Sith Lords clawing at eternity, not the hollow promises of pretenders. These voices are heavier, deeper, like stone grinding against stone, like thunder echoing through caves beneath the galaxy's skin. They do not speak words you know, they speak truths you feel. Hunger, power, inevitability. These are not fallen Jedi who called themselves Sith. These are not apprentices drunk on betrayal. These are the true Sith. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because just when you thought you had faced the darkest storm, you realized it was only the wind before the hurricane. You stand on the edge of the Republic's maps, the star lines ending, the void yawning open. Beyond here, the unknown regions stretch forever. Few return. Those who do whisper of shadows moving between stars, of fleets glimpsed in the dark, of voices carried in dreams. Some dismiss them as madness, as ghost stories, as the toll of isolation. But when you feel the tremor in the Force, you know better. Madness does not echo this deep. Ghosts do not bend the Force like this. These whispers are real. Revan felt them. That is why he marched into the void, why he donned his mask, why he remade himself as both savior and destroyer. He knew the Mandalorians were not the true threat. He knew Malak's war was only a prelude. He knew something waited beyond the veil, patient, silent, sharp. He called them the true Sith, not as title but as warning. And now, standing in the silence, you hear them too. You close your eyes, and the Force drags you deeper. You smell dust centuries old, stone worn smooth by hands long dead. You hear the scrape of claws across temple floors, the rattle of chains that never broke, the chants of rituals not meant for mortal throats. You feel the cold, sharp, invasive, like water flooding your lungs, drowning you from the inside. The air is thick, the silence heavier than screams. You are not welcome here, and yet you cannot leave. The true Sith are not scattered, they are not broken, they are not gone, they endure. Hidden in tombs carved from worlds long forgotten, their empires lie silent but intact, their fleets cloaked in darkness, their temples humming with power. They are not the Sith you have known, the fallen knights, the arrogant warlords, the traitors too hungry to wait. They are deeper, older, rooted in the bones of the galaxy itself. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you thought you had seen the origin of evil, there was always something older, darker, waiting behind it. The whispers grow louder the longer you stand here. You hear promises of power, of survival, of victory everlasting. You hear threats, sharper than blades, colder than space. You hear laughter, low and cruel, not mocking you, but dismissing you, because to them, you are not even an enemy. You are prey. And when you open your eyes again, you swear you see movement in the dark. Shapes, tall, robed, crowned with shadows, their eyes glowing faint, their voices echoing without mouths. You blink, and they vanish. But the chill in your bones does not. You walk through the ruins they left behind, the remnants of colonies devoured, the skeletons of fleets torn apart not by blasters, but by something sharper, something older. You see temples carved into mountains, their halls lined with statues whose faces are blurred by age, but whose power still hums in the stone. You touch the walls, and they tremble, humming beneath your fingertips, whispering in languages you cannot understand, but somehow feel. Every symbol carved here drips with hunger. Every line bends toward the promise of eternity through domination. And then you realize, this is not just memory, this is not just ruin, this is warning. They are not dead, they are waiting. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because every victory you won only pulled back the curtain, revealing the storm still to come. The Council does not speak of this, the Republic does not record it. They bury it under silence, under denial, under the fragile illusion of peace. But you feel it in every breath, in every tremor of the Force. The true Sith are not whispers, they are reality, and when they rise, the galaxy will not be ready. You close your eyes, and you hear them again. Louder, closer. Their voices cut through you like knives dipped in ice. You open them, and you see the stars. They shine faintly, but behind them in the dark, you see movement. Fleets waiting, shadows shifting, thrones unclaimed but not forgotten. The galaxy sleeps, the Republic rebuilds, the Jedi tell themselves the Sith are gone. But you know better. The silence is too heavy, the whispers too sharp, the shadows too patient. The true Sith remain, and one day they will rise. You open your eyes, and the battlefield is still smoking. The air tastes of ash and iron, thick enough to burn your lungs. The ground beneath your boots is blackened, soft with the weight of bodies reduced to dust. Once this place thundered with the clash of blades, the roar of fleets, the screams of Sith killing Sith in their endless hunger for power. Now, there is only silence. Silence, and one man who still stands. His name is Bane. You feel him before you see him. The Force coils around him like a storm, heavy, suffocating, impossible to ignore. His armor is scarred, his skin pocked with burns, but his presence is iron, unyielding, indestructible. Where others broke under the weight of their own ambition, he endures. Where others screamed and died, he listens to the silence, and in it he hears something new. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because when you thought the Sith had finally burned themselves out, there was always one survivor standing in the ashes, dreaming of forever. Bane does not weep for his fallen brothers. He does not mourn the end of their armies. He sees the truth they never could. The Sith destroyed themselves not because they were weak, but because they were too many. Their hunger outpaced their unity. Their greed devoured their empire from within. Every Sith was a rival. Every ally was a knife waiting for a back. Armies were not strength, they were fragility, and fragility was death. You watch as he moves among the corpses, his steps heavy, deliberate. He does not look at the faces of the fallen, for he already knows them. Ambitious, arrogant, blind. He spits their names like curses into the wind, and then he whispers something new. A creed, a vow, a truth so sharp it cuts even the silence. Two there shall be, no more, no less. You hear the words like thunder in your skull. They are simple, brutal, inevitable. The Sith will not rise in numbers again. They will rise in shadows. They will become sharper, leaner, impossible to destroy. Two only, master and apprentice, one to embody power, one to crave it. Together, eternal. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you could cut down an army, but how do you cut down an idea? You follow him as he carves his new path. His training is brutal, his discipline unshakable. He studies the past not to glorify it, but to tear it apart, to learn from every mistake carved into the bones of the Sith. He devours ancient texts, tears secrets from forgotten tombs, bends knowledge into a weapon sharper than any blade. And with every step, with every word, the Sith are remade. He finds an apprentice, Zana, a child first, trembling in the shadow of war, but sharp, hungry, ruthless beneath her fear. He takes her hand, not with kindness, but with necessity. He will shape her, mold her, break her until she is strong enough to kill him. Because that is the truth of the rule of two. The apprentice is not a student. The apprentice is a blade. And one day, that blade will cut the master down. You feel the weight of it in the Force, the inevitability of betrayal turned into law. The Sith will not war against each other in armies anymore. Their conflict will become intimate, silent, eternal. Master against apprentice, apprentice against master, not weakness, but refinement, not chaos, but perfection, each generation sharper than the last, honed in blood. The Jedi never see it coming. To them, the Sith are gone, burned out in their own fire. They lower their sabers, rebuild their temples, speak of balance and peace. They whisper to themselves that the Sith have ended, and in that blindness, Bane smiles. Because while they sing of peace, he is teaching his apprentice to kill him. While they mend their wounds, he is carving eternity into the bones of the Sith. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because peace was always an illusion. You hear the echoes of his vow again, cutting through the silence like iron. 2 there shall be. No more, no less. The words are not prophecy. They are command. They are a spell carved into the future, a law that bends every shadow toward it. From this moment forward, every Sith who lives will walk this path, whether they know his name or not. His voice will carry through centuries, shaping empires, toppling republics, guiding blades into Jedi hearts long after his body is gone. You watch him train Xana. His strikes are merciless, his teachings cruel. He breaks her body, shatters her doubts, feeds her fear, sharpens her rage. And she learns. Slowly, painfully, inevitably, she learns. You see the moment her fear hardens into hunger, the moment her doubt becomes resolve. You see her stare at him not as master, but as prey, and in her eyes, you see the truth. One day, she will kill him. One day, she will take his place. And Bane smiles. Because that is exactly what he wants. The galaxy turns. Years pass. Jedi rise and fall, republics wobble but endure. And through it all, the rule of 2 thrives in silence. Hidden, patient, unbroken. Each generation sharper, each apprentice stronger, each master more ruthless than the last. The galaxy forgets Bane's name, but they never escape his shadow. His rule echoes in every betrayal, every whispered promise, every red blade that hums in the dark. You stand at the edge of time, looking back at the ashes he left behind, and you feel it, the inevitability of his vision. Armies die, empires crumble. But 2 endure. 2 hide in the shadows, too small to see, too sharp to destroy. That is the genius of Bane. That is the curse he carved into history. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because while you looked for armies, while you watched the skies for fleets, the real danger was already whispering in the dark, sharpening its blade in silence. You close your eyes, and you hear it again. The vow. 2 there shall be, no more, no less. It echoes across centuries, a whisper, a thunder, a truth too sharp to fade. You open them, and you see the galaxy as he shaped it, not with armies, not with thrones, but with an idea. And ideas cannot be killed. The silence is heavy, the shadows thicker. Somewhere, far from your sight, a master whispers to an apprentice, and an apprentice sharpens their blade. You feel the hunger grow, patient, inevitable. The rule of 2 has begun, and its story is only just starting. You open your eyes and the galaxy is quiet. No fleets tear across the stars. No red blades hum in the dark. The temples of the Jedi rise clean and unbroken, their banners flowing in the sunlight of a republic that thinks itself eternal. In every hall, in every Senate chamber, in every archive, the same truth is repeated until it feels like fact. The Sith are gone. You breathe in the silence, and for a moment, you almost believe it. The air tastes of peace, sweet and warm, like bread baking in a city that has never known fire. The sound of children laughing echoes across plazas. The Republic expands, trade routes flowing like rivers, worlds bound together by trust instead of fear. The Jedi stand tall, guardians draped in light, their sabers igniting not in war but in ceremony. 1,000 years of order, 1,000 years of calm. But beneath it you feel the tremor. A hum in the force, low, steady, hidden, not gone, never gone, waiting. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because the silence you celebrated was always the silence before the storm. The rule of 2 lives. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but you feel it in the corners of the galaxy, in the shadows cast by light too bright. Somewhere far from the eyes of the Order, a master whispers to an apprentice, and an apprentice sharpens their blade. Not in numbers, not in armies, but in patience, in silence, in inevitability. You hear the whispers through centuries. One master dies, another rises. One apprentice slays, another kneels. The chain continues, unbroken, unyielding, sharpened with every generation. You imagine them as flickers in the dark, 2 stars burning far apart from the rest, faint but unextinguished. Each cycle strengthens the next, each betrayal perfects the art, each silence deepens the hunger. And the Jedi? They laugh, they preach, they grow complacent, they expand their libraries, their temples, their courts. They raise their younglings on stories of Sith Wars long past, as if darkness were only history. They believe the shadow is gone. They cannot hear the whispers, but you can. You close your eyes, and you see them. Not armies this time, not legions, not fleets, just two figures at a time, always two. A master who embodies power, an apprentice who craves it. They move in silence, their robes brushing across stone floors of hidden chambers, their sabers igniting only when necessary, their words dripping with patience. They are not conquerors, not yet. They are gardeners, planting seeds in soil the Jedi no longer watch. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because while you were counting victories, the Sith were counting centuries. The Republic thrives. Worlds bloom, cities reach higher into the clouds, towers of durasteel glittering like stars. But corruption seeps quietly through the cracks. Senators grow fat, their voices sharp with greed, their hands heavy with credits. Justice bends, truth twists, and in the shadows of these chambers, whispers guide them. Subtle, invisible, effective. The Sith do not need armies to corrode the Republic, they need only words. Promises, temptations, a whisper here, a bribe there, a seed planted where no Jedi looks. You stand in a Senate hall and hear it, voices raised, not in unity but in argument, accusations, insults, greed disguised as debate, and among them, so faint you almost miss it, the echo of the Sith, not in the voices themselves, but in the hunger behind them. This is not peace, this is decay, and decay is the truest soil for the Sith to bloom. The centuries turn, Jedi watch, blind in their own victory. They think corruption is natural. They think politics are untouchable. They think the galaxy is safe. But all the while, the Sith grow sharper, stronger, more patient. Every apprentice is honed by betrayal, every master sharpened by survival. The chain of power stretches across generations, unbroken. And then you realize, this is not silence. This is sharpening. You close your eyes again, and you feel the line of Sith stretching through time like a blade forged in fire. Darth Bane, then another, each name hidden, each life buried, but the hunger never dying. They do not need history to remember them. They only need the future to feel their hand. And you, standing in the warmth of 1,000 years of peace, know the truth. The Jedi are not safe. They are blind. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because the shadow you cannot see is the one that kills you. The Force itself grows quieter. The Jedi call it balance, but you know better. It is suppression. It is silence woven too tightly. The Sith are bending the current, pulling it beneath the surface, twisting it into knots unseen. The Jedi float above, smiling, never realizing the water beneath them is boiling. The rule of two thrives in this silence. Each generation sharper, each apprentice trained not just to kill, but to wait, to watch, to strike only when the galaxy has forgotten they exist. The Jedi believe they have won, but the Sith know victory is not a battle. Victory is eternity, and eternity belongs to those who wait. You hear the vow again, carved into your skull, whispered across the centuries like thunder echoing in a canyon. Two there shall be, no more, no less. You open your eyes, and the 1,000 years are gone in an instant. The galaxy you see is bright, clean, calm, but you taste the rot beneath the sweetness. You hear the cracks beneath the silence. You feel the shadows pressing closer. And then you see it, the faintest outline of a throne not yet filled, a shadow not yet claimed, a storm not yet unleashed. The chain has stretched across a millennium, unbroken, unyielding. And you realize with a chill running down your spine, it is ready. The Jedi laugh. The Republic sings. The galaxy sleeps. But in the silence, the Sith smile. Because their moment is coming. You open your eyes and you see him. At first he looks like nothing. Just another man draped in fine robes, a senator with a polite smile, his voice soft as silk. His gestures are measured, his words warm, his tone disarming. You might even believe him harmless. You might even trust him. That is his first trick. Because while his lips speak of peace, his eyes tell another story. Gold and burning, they flicker with fire the galaxy has forgotten exists. You stand in the Senate chamber, and his voice drifts like honey. Senators nod, their protests melting, their doubts dissolving. They think his words are their own, think his plans serve them, think they are clever for following his lead. But you see the strings, invisible yet unbreakable, stretching from his fingers to their throats. Every motion a tug, every silence a leash. They do not serve the Republic, they serve him. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because while you watched for armies, the real war was being fought with whispers. And the Sith were winning. He is not a man. He is patience wrapped in flesh, ambition carved into bone. You feel the weight of centuries behind his every smile. The rule of two alive, perfected, inevitable. Darth Sidious. Apprentice once, master now. Not content with thrones of stone or fleets of steel, he seeks something greater. He seeks eternity through empire. You taste the rot in the air, masked beneath the perfume of politics. You smell it in the velvet halls of Coruscant, where senators feast while their people starve. You hear it in the hollow speeches of guardians too blind to see their own collapse. And through it all, Sidious walks like a shadow made flesh, his every step bending the galaxy closer to his design. You see him approach the Jedi, bowing his head, feigning humility. His words drip with respect, his tone careful, deferential. He calls them noble, calls them wise, calls them defenders of peace. And the Jedi, oh, the Jedi believe him. They smile at his kindness, nod at his diplomacy, bask in his admiration. They never notice the gleam in his eye, the twitch at the corner of his mouth. They never notice that every word he speaks is a test, a probe, a knife slipped between the ribs of their order. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because your greatest enemy did not charge at you with a blade. He walked beside you, hand outstretched, smile warm, shadow hidden. And the war begins, not with sabers, not with fleets, but with pawns. Sidious moves them carefully, slowly, inevitably. He whispers to corporations, stirs greed in their leaders. He inflames old wounds in forgotten systems, reminds them of slights the Republic never healed. He breathes life into separatist cries, feeding them coin, feeding them weapons, feeding them fear. He shapes the galaxy into chaos while standing in the center as its savior. You watch as armies rise, droids in endless ranks, metal bodies gleaming beneath alien suns, and at the same time, he forges another army, hidden in plain sight, clones bred in secrecy, engineered for obedience, waiting for the word that will break the galaxy's back. 2 armies, 2 wars, both his. The galaxy sees division. Sidious sees inevitability. You hear his laughter in the Force, low and cruel, the sound of thunder echoing in caverns too deep for light. He does not need to raise his saber. He does not need to reveal his hand. He only needs to push, and the galaxy falls. Every planet consumed in war, every senator crying for order, every Jedi stretched thinner and thinner until their vaunted wisdom collapses into desperation. And still, they do not see him. You feel the chill in your bones as he sharpens the trap. The Jedi sit in council, speaking of balance, of visions clouded, of shadows they cannot name. They feel the dark side pressing against them, suffocating, but they cannot find its source. And all the while, Sidious sits at the heart of their republic, smiling, waiting. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because the shadow you could not see was the one that devoured you. You walk with him through the halls of power. He passes guards who salute, aides who bow, citizens who cheer. They love him, they worship him, they believe him. He is the kind face of government, the gentle hand in chaos, the promise of safety in the storm. But beneath his robes, beneath his flesh, burns something older, darker, inevitable. He is the true Sith dream realized, the rule of two's perfection brought to life. You hear his words, sharp now, no longer whispered but thundered across the chamber. I love democracy. I love the Republic. The Senate roars in approval, blind to the venom in his tone, deaf to the laughter coiled inside the Force. You taste bile in your throat because you know the truth. He does not love democracy. He does not love the Republic. He loves their corpses, ready to be draped beneath his throne. The galaxy bends, systems burn, the war rages, and still, he grows stronger. Every battle fuels him, every scream feeds him, every desperate Jedi who ignites their saber in hopeless defense adds another spark to the fire that will consume their order. And then you see it, the final step, the mask dropping. He names himself Chancellor for life. The Senate cheers, the Republic applauds, the galaxy kneels, and the Jedi? They hesitate, their doubts choking them, their courage faltering. You hear his voice echo in your skull, sharp as a blade. I am the Senate. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because by the time you raised your blade, it was already too late. You stand on the precipice of the galaxy's end. Sidious no longer hides. His smile stretches wider, his eyes burn brighter, his hands drip with power. He has turned senators into pawns, Jedi into fools, armies into weapons. He has become the shadow made flesh, the storm that has waited 1,000 years, the rule of two perfected in one man's rise. And now, the trap closes. You feel it in the Force, sharp, final, inevitable. The Republic is already his, the Jedi are already broken, the war is already won. But Sidious is not content with victory. He wants annihilation. He wants history rewritten in his image. He wants eternity. And so, the word forms on his lips. The command, the betrayal, the scream that will echo across the galaxy. Order. You open your eyes, and the war is over. The Clone Wars, the endless tide of blaster fire and lightsabers, the thunder of fleets shattering across star systems. It has all gone quiet. The Senate chamber is hushed beneath the roar of one man's voice. The Republic no longer exists. The Jedi are ash and whispers. The galaxy kneels to an emperor. And yet you feel it. The silence is a lie. The war did not end. It only changed. You breathe in, and the air tastes of iron, wet stone, and smoke that has drifted across centuries. You hear a sound at first so faint you think it is only memory, a chant, low and rhythmic, rising and falling like waves on a black shore. You close your eyes, and it grows louder, heavier, until it rattles in your chest. And then you see it, not Coruscant, not Naboo, not the familiar stars. A world hidden in storms, its skies black and jagged, its surface carved with temples older than empires. Exegol. The lightning is constant, violet and cold, flashing across monoliths that scrape the sky. The ground trembles beneath you, stones slick with rain that tastes like blood. And within the heart of the storm, you see them. Not soldiers, not senators, not even Sith Lords you know by name. No, this is something else. An ocean of figures cloaked in shadow, millions of voices chanting as one. They raise their arms, their cries echoing not just through the air, but through the Force itself, so loud it drowns your own thoughts. You feel the vibration of it in your bones, like drums pounding in your ribcage. They are not individuals. They are a chorus. They are the Sith Eternal. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you thought you had cut the head from the snake, you never realized the body stretched across eternity. You watched the lightning strike the temple's crown, arcs of power racing down its pillars. The sound is deafening, the air thick with ozo, with the copper taste of electricity. The chant grows louder, and then you hear a voice rise above them all, not a voice of flesh, not a voice bound to time, a voice that feels as if it has been echoing since Korriban itself. Palpatine. Sidious. Darth Sidious. But he is different now. His flesh is broken, scarred, barely clinging to bone. His body is a husk, his fingers blackened claws, and yet his power is heavier than ever. You feel it pressing against you like the weight of a planet, suffocating, unavoidable. He does not need a throne of gold. He sits upon a throne of eternity, raised high above the chanting masses, every syllable they scream feeding his hunger. You realize, with a chill that creeps down your spine, that the Sith never died. Not with Bane, not with Sidious, not even with death itself. They endured, they grew, they multiplied not in flesh but in faith, an entire order hidden in the dark, waiting for centuries, worshipping the shadow, preparing for the day when their master would rise again. You feel their hunger, vast and bottomless, each chant a wound in the force, each cry a blade dragging across your skin. They are not Sith Lords with sabers. They are something older, stranger, more terrible. They are the memory of the Sith, given flesh by devotion, a legion of believers who are more shadow than human. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you never fought just a man. You fought a dream, a religion, an idea that did not need light to survive. The temple shakes, the chanting rises, Sidious raises his hands, and from the darkness fleets emerge, massive warships, larger than anything the galaxy has ever seen. They split the clouds like leviathans, their hulls bristling with cannons capable of annihilating worlds. And you realize what the chants have built, not just faith, not just worship, but weapons. An empire forged in silence, hidden in storms, ready to strike. The air is cold now, colder than death, colder than space itself. Your breath fogs as you watch lightning crawl across the fleet, the glow of their engines burning red in the storm. And Sidious's voice cuts through the chanting, sharp as iron. He does not whisper anymore. He does not hide. He declares what has always been true: the Sith are eternal. You close your eyes and the galaxy plays out before you like a wound reopening. Korriban's tombs, Sadow's fleets, Bane's creed, Sidious's smile, all of it has led here. Every mask, every war, every shadow. The Sith were never defeated. They were only waiting, sharpening, gathering in silence while the Jedi fooled themselves with dreams of balance. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you were fighting the wrong war all along. You open your eyes, and the chanting crescendos. The temple shudders. The air vibrates with power. You hear the Sith Eternals cry rising in unison, millions of voices blending into one wordless scream that shakes the stars themselves. And for the first time, you realize something that steals the breath from your chest. This is not the beginning of a new war. This is the end of the same war that began 1,000 generations ago. The shadow that began on Korriban echoes here, alive, louder, more terrible than ever. The galaxy thought the Sith had been broken, scattered, destroyed. But you know the truth now. They never ended. They only changed masks. And as the storm rages, as the chants thunder, as the fleets awaken, you hear Sidious's laughter cut through it all. It is the same laugh that echoed in the Senate, the same laugh that whispered behind his smile, the same laugh that mocked the Jedi, even in their victory. It is not the laugh of a man. It is the laugh of eternity. And then, the storm falls silent. The chanting stops. The galaxy holds its breath. Because the Sith Eternal are ready. And their war has only just begun.